Chapter 432. The people who were watching the surging school of fish at the edge of the river began to widen their eyes. Someone adjusted his glasses and subconsciously said, "Is there something under the water?" "Aren't they all fish?" "No. There seems to be something. Look, bubbles." Some bubbles began to emerge from the bottom of the river. At the same time, the fish in the river became crazier and jumped out of the water. "Oh, there seems to be something. Run." Suddenly a scream was heard. The surface of the river suddenly swelled up a little, as if something was breaking through. In the blink of an eye, the river that had just swelled up suddenly erupted like a volcano, and a huge water column shot up into the sky. The water column that soared into the sky stirred up the river completely. The churning river water rushed to the riverbank and was washed away by the people here. At this moment, the air was filled with the fishy smell of the river water and mist. Even the fishes in the river were washed up into the river. After the water column disappeared, the river gradually calmed down, but it was still very muddy. What happened under the embankment? Pipeline gas explosion? Is there a gas pipe here? I don't know, but I don't care so much. Pick up the fish. To the commoners, this was like a river fish that fell from the sky. Everywhere there were fresh, fat, and lively river fishes. Suddenly, some people hurriedly picked up the fish, while others disdained this behavior. Braving the danger of being drenched and not knowing if there would be another wave of fish, they raised their mobile phones and took pictures of the muddy river, looking forward to seeing the spectacle just now again and discussing the reason for it. But the river was too muddy, and no one could see clearly what was in it. The crazy river began to pour into the second seal. After the colorful light appeared, the entrance of the cave expanded several times and formed a huge passage. The river poured in and covered the feet of Xiang Lu and Kuk. The two partners looked terrible at this time. Xiang Lu covered his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood, again and again, as if he couldn't stop. And Kuk looked at the thousand-thorn spear in his hand seriously. There was a gap at the tip of the spear, a gap that had been cut out. The thousand-thorn spear had been passed down for many years and had never been broken, but now it was broken in his hand. "What is that?" Kuk slightly raised his head. At this time, Su Zijuan's long hair was swaying in the air. She opened her hands, and the dark red monster power around her body was like the waves in the sea. But she looked extremely uncomfortable, and in front of Su Zijuan there was a sword bathed in colorful light. Kuk had seen many ancient swords. Only this ancient sword made him feel a sense of submission. It was a feeling that he had to kneel down in front of the king. Only by holding the thousand-thorn spear in his hand and landing on the ground could he resist the instinctive impulse of his body. Kelowna, no, the most powerful weapon in ancient Jiuzhou. Jiuzhou Shenyuan's sword. Xiang Lu finally stopped vomiting blood with a shocked face. "I didn't expect that she can call it." "Jiuzhou Shenyuan's sword?" Kuk deeply frowned. Xiang Lu narrowed his eyes and said weakly, "Do you feel the desire to kneel down? This is the power of Jiuzhou Shenyuan, because it's the sword of human relations, the sword of the emperor, the sword of the emperor. Kuk, I don't know the origin of your spear, but I can say that your spear is only fluorescent before Jiuzhou Shenyuan." Kuk snorted. Xiang Lu gritted his teeth. "Can't you hear the sad cry of your spear?" More than sad cry, the thousand-thorn spear was clearly still trembling with its own will. Kuk took a deep breath, holding the thousand-thorn spear tightly to support himself up. He even put his palm on the spear and cut a line of blood. "What do you want to do?" "Shoot her," Kuk calmly said. Xiang Lu struggled to stand up. "Don't! Su Zijuan is no longer a member of Shenyuan royal family. Jiuzhou Shenyuan is the nemesis of all monsters." She just barely called it out. "Don't you see her situation now? That's why I have to take this opportunity," Kuk said decisively. Xiang Lu angrily said, "Except for Shenyuan royal family, no one can suppress Jiuzhou Shenyuan. Its power is not something you can imagine. In the ancient legend of Xiang Lu, Jiuzhou Xuanyuan's power is enough to destroy the world. If you shoot her now, once Jiuzhou Xuanyuan goes out of control, let alone the ley line, we won't be able to leave this place alive. Then what do you think we should do? Kuk stopped. Xiang Lu frowned. When Jiuzhou Xuanyuan came out, its power exploded. She tried her best to reverse its leaking power, barely keeping the seal of this cave and letting the power leak to the riverbed outside. But it seems that Su Zijuan can't hold it for long. We have to leave this place at once. If Su Zijuan can't control Jiuzhou Xuanyuan and Jiuzhou Xuanyuan explodes, the seal here will also be destroyed. Let's go to the third seal point now. Whether we can take the ley line or not depends on our luck. Cook frowned. In the end, he nodded and said unwillingly, "All right." Indeed, he could feel how terrifying the Jiuzhou Xuanyuan under the colorful light was. Maybe it was an illusion. Since he gave up the idea of continuing to attack, the thousand-thorn spear seemed to be relaxed. Before the river completely flooded in, Xiang Lu pulled Kuk, and the two of them quickly left under the riverbed. Su Zijuan could see all this, but at this moment she couldn't move at all. Jiuzhou Xuanyuan in front of her was like a volcano that would explode at any time, and she was a layer of film that wrapped this huge volcano as if it would break at any time. Blood slowly flowed out from Su Zijuan's 5 orifices, which made her deeply understand what it meant to reap what she sowed. Perhaps like what Xiang Lu said, if she didn't care about the existence of the monster race in the secular world, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Xuanyuan, do you know that if you expel the monster blood from my body, I will die immediately? Can't you go to hell to find your master? Su Zijuan spat out another mouthful of blood, looking at Jiuzhou Xuanyuan with a bitter smile. But the expanding power was getting stronger and stronger. Su Zijuan bitterly smiled. Unexpectedly, Xiang Lu's words came true. She was trapped in a cocoon of her own making. But at least not here, Su Zijuan stared down. If the power of Jiuzhou Xuanyuan exploded here, then Luo Dance, who was hiding in the depths of the earth, would also. Only this little guy, Su Zijuan, didn't want to see her die without seeing a new day. Su Zijuan suddenly gritted her teeth, looking up and staring at the top of the cave. If the power of Jiuzhou Xuanyuan was brought to the surface, everyone had a scale in their heart. At this moment, Su Zijuan's scale was obviously inclined to the side that was more important to her. "Old woman, if you want to settle accounts with me, wait until you die." Su Zijuan suddenly shouted and dragged Jiuzhou Xuanyuan up to the sky while shedding tears of blood. "I'll settle accounts with you now." In the sound of the river, a furious voice suddenly sounded. In the corner of the cave, the air seemed to be distorted. A figure quickly shot out from the distortion. He came to Su Zijuan. "Old woman, you, don't talk nonsense. I'll suppress Jiuzhou Xuanyuan for you. Kick it back." Long Shirwa said, and then grabbed the blade of Jiuzhou Xuanyuan with both hands. "Okay." Long Shirwa's pupils suddenly turned golden. Golden scales began to appear on her hands, and 2 huge dragon horns grew out of her forehead. "Jiuzhou Xuanyuan, I'll protect the land of Kelowna, and you'll protect the people of Kelowna. Don't resist me. Be quiet." Her hands that were covered with dragon scales were now cut by the sharp blade, and a large amount of golden blood began to cover the blade of Jiuzhou Xuanyuan. Like a seal, it was gradually covered by the powerful multicolored light. Long Shirwa's face suddenly turned pale. Su Zijuan now held the hilt of the sword with both hands and restrained her demon power. The two of them began to slowly descend. The river below began to spiral and finally turned into a whirlpool, revealing a clean land. Su Zijuan held the hilt of the sword and slowly inserted the blade into the ground. The two of them were completely focused, fearing that there would be a slight deviation. In just a few seconds, they were already sweating profusely. Finally, the most powerful divine weapon of the ancient 9 regions, Jiuzhou Xuanyuan's blade, was completely inserted into the ground, and at this moment, it completely disappeared without a trace. Su Zijuan and Long Shiruo collapsed on the ground at the same time. Long Shiruo wiped her sweat and said with lingering fear, "That was close. If I was half a step late, no one would be able to take the blame." Long Shiruo fiercely stared at Su Zijuan and said angrily, "Girl, is your head caught in the door? How dare you call Zhuzhou Xianyuan out? Before that, can you put on your clothes first?" Su Zijuan replied calmly, but there was a look of gratitude in her eyes. Long Shiruo was angry. "Do you think I have time to put on my clothes? Who knows where I was at that time? I felt that Zhuzhou Xianyuan was taken out by you. I spat out a mouthful of blood and came here in a hurry. So near yet worlds apart. Shinryu's secret technique." Su Zijuan smiled bitterly and said softly, "You've lost a lot of strength because of suppressing Zhuzhou Xianyuan for me. I'm sorry, Aunt. You actually know." Long Shiruo took a deep breath and her anger seemed to be half gone. She shook her head and said, "What happened? Why is it in this sealed place?" "Xianglu is back," Su Zijuan said seriously. "What?" Long Shiruo frowned. But at this moment, Long Shiruo also spat out a mouthful of blood directly on Su Zijuan's face. Something had pierced through her chest. It was a reddish-brown object that looked like a tree branch. Chapter 433. Aunt. The urgent voice broke Su Zijuan's throat and echoed in the cave. Long Shiruo looked down at the wound on her chest. She suddenly staggered and leaned forward. She was about to fall to the ground. But at the moment when her body was about to fall, Long Shiruo took a step forward and stopped falling. She gritted her teeth and quickly swung her arm backward, cutting off the sharp horny object that had pierced her body. There seemed to be a dragon's roar echoing in the cave. This backhand chop not only cut off the spike that attacked her, but also cut through the air and fiercely chopped on the weird meatball. Part of the meatball was directly cut off by the sharp airflow. A part of the flesh was cut off and green, sticky liquid flowed out. The meatball instantly dived into the river water that flooded the cave. Escape! Finally, the river directly submerged Long Shiruo and Su Zijuan. There was no light source in the water. It was unknown when those sealing incantations started, but they had completely dimmed. Su Zijuan could only drag her exhausted body with her little monster power. She pulled Long Shiruo's body and threw them out of the cave with the current. Unexpectedly, Xianglu still had a trick up his sleeve. Su Zijuan climbed up from the side of the riverbank and looked at the surrounding environment. There was a shallow beach here where there were a few boats and some bamboo fish stakes parked along the riverside. Su Zijuan dragged Long Shiruo onto the fish stakes and checked Long Shiruo's injury. Long Shiruo's eyes were closed and her face was pale. There was a shocking wound on her chest. Su Zijuan gritted her teeth and tore her skirt. She simply wrapped Long Shiruo's body and carried her on her back. As long as she was still on the ground, Kelowna's Shinryu would not die. But Su Zijuan knew better than anyone else that Long Shiruo was likely to sleep like this forever. No one knew when she would wake up. And if she woke up, she would still be her. Don't sleep. If you sleep, I will never take care of the hospital for you. So you must wake up. Old woman. Carrying Long Shiruo on her back, Su Zijuan quickly ran to the river bank. Although she had little monster power left, her running speed was much faster than ordinary people. How fast? Probably running a marathon at the speed of a world sprint champion. On the other side of the riverbank, two figures climbed to the riverbank awkwardly. Kuk and Xianglu. At this time, Kuk took out a small box from his clothes and opened it. There were two rows. The upper row contained red capsules, and the lower row contained blue capsules. Kuk quickly took out a blue capsule and swallowed it into his mouth. Then he began to breathe heavily. Blue capsules were used for healing, while red capsules were like military food, which could replenish body heat as fast as possible. Xianglu looked at it indifferently. He used to be in the club and knew that it was one of the technical achievements of the club, but it had no effect on monsters. After a while, Xiang stood up and asked directly, "Cuck, can you move now?" Cuck nodded, "Okay. Where's the third seal point?" Xiang took a step forward and said seriously, "Not far. But we have to see the situation clearly first. We left for some time, but the power of Juzhou Xianyuan suddenly disappeared. Did Su Zijuan suppress it? That incredible power, actually." Cuck frowned. He didn't have such a strong perception as a monster, but he had the thousand-thorn spear. It had completely calmed down and obviously didn't feel threatened. This action has provoked a very troublesome guy for the club. Su Zijuan has already known the existence of the club. Cuck said in a deep voice, "Xiang, I hope we can take away the last ley line, or we will lose more than we gain. After all, she is a big monster with such a horrible weapon." She just barely called it out, and she was also desperately trying. Xiang sneered, and then said in a deep voice, "But to be honest, if I didn't distract her attention, and your magic spear could quietly attack her, forcing her to call Juzhou Xianyuan almost instinctively, we would be in big trouble. I didn't expect that she actually has such a horrible monster power." Cuck nodded with deep feeling. The big monster of the East is really powerful. Among the 12 immortal generals, there are definitely no more than 2 who can fight with this level of monster. Let's not talk about this. Cuck shook his head. Let's move quickly. Which direction? Xiang pointed to the side. In the southern suburb, there is a garbage incineration station, about 400 meters underground. Cuck looked in that direction and subconsciously nodded. "Is there a passage?" "Yes." Xiang came closer and smiled. "The passage is—" Cook listened attentively, but his expression suddenly changed. "Xiang you—" Cuck looked at the scene in front of him with a shocked face. Xiang purple eyebrows were raised at this time, like another kind of ridicule. His chest was directly pierced through by Xiang arm. His abdomen was cut open. Xiang sneered and used his arm to lift Cuck's body up. Xiang then laughed wildly. "Do you want to say that I am betraying you? Ha 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 ha. Cuck, you can't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your club. I will never forget how I was caught by your club when I was in exile, and how you did all kinds of experiments on me every day. What you did to me, I will pay you back little by little. Ha 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 ha." Cuck gritted his teeth and lifted the thousand-thorn spear in his hand. Unexpectedly, Xiang grabbed the spear and took it away. "This magic spear, as a little interest, it belongs to me." Then Xiang waved his hand and threw Cuck's body to the ground. He lifted his leg and stepped on Cuck's head, stepping it into the mud on the riverbank, and sneered, "What 12 immortal generals? You're just a watchdog. Ley line? You're lying? Xiang clicked his tongue. No, the ley line does exist. You also saw the 2 seals, didn't you?" Xiang sneered, "But I never thought of taking it out and giving it to you. Cuck, don't you understand? If I didn't mention the ley line to your club, would you let me go so easily and let me leave the hell-like laboratory? Absolutely not. So they compromised and sent you to monitor me all the way. I admit that your magic spear is very powerful, and I may not be your opponent, but the opportunity came, didn't it?" Xiang stepped on Cuck's head deeper. "The ley line is mine, and all the monsters in this city will listen to me. Cuck, I'll soon send all the members of the club to hell to reunite with you." Then Xiang stabbed the thousand-thorn spear to the back of Cuck's neck. Unexpectedly, the thousand-thorn spear was crazily vibrating, shaking Xiang arm and making his blood boil. "Do you think I can't kill your master without you?" Xiang sneered and suddenly lifted his foot and stepped down. It was the sound of bones breaking. That was Cuck's head. Cuck, who was struggling, suddenly stopped, lying in the mud, motionless. The thousand-thorn spear suddenly stopped vibrating, but at the same time it dimmed down. It was no longer a bright scarlet red. Instead, it had turned gray, and was stained with rust. Humph, you're loyal. But I'll remake you and let you surrender to me. Xiang Lu snorted and directly kicked Cuck's body into the river ahead. After that, Xiang Lu took the rusty thousand-thorn spear and left this place. He was also seriously injured. Naturally, he wouldn't try to go to the third seal point in such a situation. What he needed to do was very simple. That was to heal himself as fast as possible. What was the fastest way? Of course, to devour other monsters. Then, where were the most monsters? In this city, there was only one place, Elysium Bar. In fact, because of the leakage of the power of Zhuozhou Shenyuan, the temperature of the river was higher than usual, but it was not boiling. It was probably the temperature of the water that was about to cool down. The bait began to swim away because a shadow slowly sank from the top of the river. The fish couldn't tell what it was, but they still stayed away from it, because within this figure, something even dimmer than the depths of the river began to emerge, something even darker. It was like a strip, but it had a solid texture. The black substance began to emerge from the shadow, and it began to wrap this shadow. Suddenly, a shadow seemed to appear in the river and gently hugged the sinking figure. His chest was broken, and his head was deformed. It was Cook who no longer enjoyed life. She, the shadow, appeared. She said, as if she was saying, "The descendants of the Shadow Country will not die." "Teacher!" Cuck's lips moved slightly, and he opened his eyes. His body had recovered, but he fainted again, and his body flowed down the river bed with the undercurrent. Chapter 434. There was a special place in the bar's office with a huge cushion. This was where Chichi Kamaya slept. But something made Chichi Kamaya, who was sleeping well, have to stick out his head from the turtle shell. He showed a trace of confusion, but he soon became clear and stretched out his limbs. Chichi Kamaya, who carried a turtle shell, came to the original floor-to-ceiling glass wall, nailed with wooden boards. He opened the curtain and looked down at the bar. Partying day and night was always the main theme of the Elysium Bar. In the words of the boss, Sun Shaosheng, if you are not happy, what is the difference between you and a salted fish? At this moment, Sun Shaosheng was like the mascot of the bar. He was mixed in the dance floor below, holding a bottle of wine and partying with a group of monsters. Chichi Kamaya frowned at this moment and knocked hard with a crutch. The disc jockey downstairs had sharp ears. After hearing the familiar sound of the crutch, he quickly turned off all the music here. Just like any other bar or nightclub, the sudden stop of the music caused all the monster customers to be stunned. Sun Shaosheng frowned at this time. Who turned off the music? Come out. I will kill you. Chichi Kamaya, why did you turn off the music? Chichi Kamaya said slowly, Boss, don't you think it's too noisy? Sun Shaosheng was taken aback and laughed. Ha! Old turtle, are you stupid? What is this place? It's not lively or happy. Without music, is it still the Elysium Bar? There is a soundproof enchantment outside. You are not afraid of an explosion here. Music! Everyone, continue to party. Chichi Kamaya knocked the crutch heavily again and said, I don't care how loud the music is, but you have to restrain yourself. Who went overboard and shook the ground with monster spirit power. Shook? Sun Shaosheng was taken aback. At this moment, he suddenly frowned and looked up thoughtfully. At the same time, Chichi Kamaya's expression also became dignified. Disc jockey, play the music. Sun Shaosheng waved his hand, but he jumped directly to the corridor on the second floor and walked into the office. As soon as he opened the door of the office, Brother Shaosheng said, What was that wave just now? Why do I have a feeling of trepidation? Old turtle, don't tell me you don't know. Your face betrayed you. Boss, I'm afraid this is the power of Zhuozhou Shenyuan. Chichi Kamaya frowned and said solemnly, I'm afraid something happened to the princess. You mean the thing about Xiang Lu? Sun Shaosheng blinked his eyes several times. Chichi Kamaya didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out a transparent bead the size of 2 fists. Chichikamaya held the bead and walked to Sun Shaosheng. He didn't call Sun Shaosheng boss anymore. He said seriously, Sun Shaosheng, I want you to protect me now. I want to use the secret technique of heavenly vision and earthly hearing to see what happened. Sun Shaosheng sneered, but he wasn't dissatisfied. He just said indifferently, every time you use it, your lifespan will be shortened. You are really King willing. 8 or 10 years is not a big problem for me. Chichikamaya shook his head and sat down directly. Chichikamaya held the transparent bead with both hands. He closed his eyes and his lips were moving. The monster's spirit power in his body was flowing at a strange speed. Sun Shaosheng didn't dare to delay. He squatted in front of the bead and widened his eyes. The bead began to show some vague pictures. After a long time, there were only a few pictures. The picture of Su Zijuan pulling out Jiuzhou Xianyuan. The picture of Xiang Lu killing a man's son, Shaosheng didn't know. The picture of Su Zijuan running with long Shiruo on her back. A few pictures flashed, and the bead suddenly darkened. Chichikamaya also opened his eyes, showing a trace of tiredness. But Sun Shaosheng scratched his head and said, That's it? That's it. Old turtle, how many years of your lifespan did you use? 1 month. Chichikamaya said indifferently. Didn't he say that 8 or 10 years was not a problem? Why are you in such a hurry? Can't you roughly figure out what happened? The princess is now coming here with Lord Long. You can ask the princess about the details later. Chichikamaya rolled his eyes and said, Do I need to sacrifice so much lifespan for something that I will know sooner or later? It's enough as long as I know that the princess is safe. Sun Shaosheng, Brother Shaosheng, felt that this seemed to be the truth. He was speechless. Old turtle, what are we going to do now? Chichikamaya frowned and said, Go and dig out the monkey spirit wine you hid. It can be used later. In addition, disperse all the guests. The news that Lord Long was seriously injured can't be spread out easily. In addition, let these monsters hide. I just felt that something bad was happening in this city. It seems that there is a huge black shadow covering the fate of the entire city. What is it? You can't reveal too much. Chichikamaya shook his head and shrugged. Besides, I don't know at all. Huh. Sun Shaosheng widened his eyes and lifted Chichikamaya. He gritted his teeth and said, Old turtle, if you were not the old servant of Zijuan, I would have pried open your turtle shell and stewed you. Why don't you go and dig for the spirit wine? Chichikamaya said indifferently, If you delay, the princess will blame me. I won't take the blame for you. And this problem is more serious. Sun Shaosheng threw Chichikamaya out. I'm going to dig. You disperse all the monsters here. I'll be back soon. Sun Shaosheng left the bar at once. Chichikamaya was busy evacuating the guests in the bar, but his kung fu was far from done. He called Ghost Baby to replace him, and he climbed to the upper office. On the mat he used to sleep, there was already an unconscious person lying on it. Long Shiruo, Chichikamaya greets the princess. At the same time, Su Zijuan leaned on Long Shiruo and grabbed her hand. Su Zijuan heard the sound, but she didn't look back. Don't talk nonsense. Yes, princess. Chichikamaya, who always spoke slowly, spoke a lot faster at this time. Princess, I know you are coming, so I have sent Sun Shaosheng to get the monkey spirit wine. It should be of some help to Lord Long. But specifically, let me see Lord Long's injury personally. You knew I was coming? I just sensed the appearance of Jiuzhou Xianyuan, so I used heaven vision and earth hearing. Chichikamaya bowed his head. Chichikamaya. Su Zijuan frowned. This kind of secret technique that shortens your life, don't use it in the future. For the princess, I'm willing to die. How can my life of 8 to 10 years be compared to the princess's safety? Su Zijuan said with emotion, You are loyal. All right, I'll remember your kindness. Come over here first and take a look at my aunt's injuries. Yes, Well, he is an old turtle. The city became chaotic in a day. Of course, it was not the end of the world, but it was quite bad. All kinds of small animals and creatures suddenly went out of control and brought countless troubles to the city. Some people were bitten, some people were hit by cars, several streets were blocked at once. There was even a tremor that could be felt, the slight tremor of the earth. This city was not far from the seaside, but it was not in the earthquake zone. But now they could clearly feel the tremor of the earth. Although it was not a disaster-level fluctuation, it was enough to shake the water in the cup and make the decorations on the shop window fall. It was terrifying. The frightened children caused the sound of crying to rise and fall in all directions. The municipal units were also in a mess. People didn't know that the city was facing some unimaginable dangers, but they knew that today was quite bad. It was quite bad. On the rooftop of a tall building in the center of the city, the boss of the club, Miss Maid, and at that appeared in light and shadow, the new will of the underground ley line, this soul that was not completely completed. Although it was not completely completed, it was born from the heaven and earth, a spirit of nature. I don't like this city now. It looked back at Luaccio and shook its head. I don't like it. I don't like it either. Do you have relatives? It suddenly asked. Yes. Luaccio didn't even think about it. I have one. I have one too. It nodded and looked at the people below, saying softly. As it said, it raised its head. There were no pupils in its golden eyes, but Luaccio could understand its meaning. So Luaccio nodded and stepped forward. He faced the city, closed his eyes, and opened his hands slightly on both sides. In the distance, the crazy animals suddenly quieted down, squatting on the ground and wagging their tails. In the distance, the rats began to leave the busy area, and the city slowly began to quiet down. It didn't seem to shake anymore. A small sparrow suddenly flew to Yu's shoulder, chirping a few times before flying away. Yu came behind Luaccio. Boss Luo opened his eyes. Miss Maid whispered a few words in Luaccio's ear. Chapter 435. It was a bumper harvest. For Jussi, today was definitely a bumper harvest day. Whether it was steamed, braised, or eaten raw, the rats caught at this time were enough for Jussi to make 18 different kinds of dishes. Can you stop eating? Little rabbit monster Ling Ling stared at Jussi with her red eyes. Little rabbit monster was a vegetarian. I don't care. I want to eat. Lil Pig turned around and sucked the rat's tail into his mouth, chewing it with relish. Sister Blackwater. Ling Ling turned to look at Blackwater. Recently, Sister Blackwater slept a lot, but she still went out to find food for the little monsters. Of course, it was not as plentiful as before. Ling Ling knew that Sister Blackwater was really tired. I don't know what happened. In Blackwater's arms, there was only one partridge bird who had not been able to transform. There were more monster features on her body than human features. She had bird legs, bird wings, bird beak. Only her face and body looked like a human 1 or 2 years old baby girl. The little partridge bird was trembling slightly in Blackwater's arms. It was a monster's nature. The slight tremors of the earth made the young, demonic partridge bird panic for some reason. Blackwater didn't dare to leave the small monsters here, even though she was also concerned about what was happening outside. Especially not long ago, there was a moment when she felt a kind of special feeling for her. It was like the feeling of an invincible divine weapon in the land of the 9 regions in her inherited memory. The floor of the hotel suddenly stopped shaking. Jussi was lying on the windowsill, saying disappointedly, "Ah, the rats are gone." You only know how to eat. Ling Ling stared at her again. It seems to have stopped. Blackwater looked out of the window in confusion. It seems to have stopped. Sister Wren, Sister Wren? Sister Wren. Stop, it's gone. It's gone. Wren Xiling, who was swinging the baseball bat in her hand and had already gotten the best performance on the road, felt someone patting her shoulder. She stopped subconsciously and gasped, What's gone? Lizzie was stunned. She sighed and said, the rats are gone. The earthquake is gone. Oh, is that so? Ren Xiling pressed the baseball ball against the cement road and gasped for air. The rats are gone, and the earthquake is gone. Wait, was there an earthquake just now? Why don't I feel anything? Probably. Lizzie glanced at the ground, full of Ren Xiling's spoils of war. She felt sorry for these rats and said embarrassedly, Sister Rin, you're probably too excited? Ren Xiling rolled her eyes at Lizzie and threw the baseball bat back into the car. She took out the phone and called, Hello, old Ma, where are you? Me. I'm. Sir Ma Mahoud looked around and said, next to the trash can. Why aren't you in the trash can? It's full. Sir Ma didn't even think about it, but after looking at the trash can next to him, he said, No. *T. I'm fighting the rats. Why am I in the trash can? You're also fighting the rats? Yes, they're all out. Do you know what happened? I don't know. It happened suddenly, and there was an earthquake just now. I swear to God, I'm really fighting the rats, so I'm next to the trash can. I'm not hiding here because I'm afraid. Ma Howd corrected her. Okay, no one will laugh at you. Ren Xiling rolled her eyes. Forget it. If you know something later, remember to tell me immediately. Okay. You're okay. Hello. This woman. Ma Howd shook her head and glanced at the trash can beside her. So smelly. Sir Ma pinched his nose and walked away from the trash can. Hello, Luocio, are you okay? Sub-editor Rin called Ma Howd after hanging up Luocio's call. What's wrong with me? Didn't you feel it? There was an earthquake just now, and there were a lot of rats. No. Ren Xiling was stunned. She didn't doubt Luocio's words and muttered, Is it just a local phenomenon? Forget it as long as you're okay. I just asked Uncle Ma. Well, I'll let you know when I get the news. Just a message is enough. Let's go to class. Oh, okay. Be careful, I'm now. Hello. Brat. Ren Xiling shook her head and felt relieved. After hanging up the phone, she leaned against the car door. In fact, although the rats were gone and the earthquake was also gone, there was still a traffic jam here. Lizzie, why don't we go to 7 to 10 next door to eat something? It seems that there's no need for an interview today. I guess the conference is also messed up. Maybe it was cancelled at the last minute. Roar. We want to see the boss. Yes, ask the boss to come out. We paid the entrance fee with real money. Why should we go now? It's not dark yet. Looking at the group of drunk monsters, Ghost Baby just sneered. He spun the knife in his hand, and dozens of knives appeared behind his back, emitting a burst of cold air. Who wants to make trouble? A cold glint flashed, and the drunkenness of the monsters faded away. They all shrank back. Only then did they remember that this Mr. Ghost Child was not a kind person. The Elysium Bar is closed today. I'll remember your debts and make it up to you next time. If you make trouble again, don't blame me for using my Azura to serve you. The demons immediately shuddered and rushed toward the door of the bar in a hubbub. At this time, bang! The iron gate at the entrance of the Elysium Bar was suddenly slammed open by something. The huge iron gate flew out and knocked away many of the monsters. At the entrance, a black-clothed man with a bald head, purple eyebrows, and a rusty spear in his hand slowly walked in. Xiang Lu. The extremely cold spirit creature power released from Xiang Lu's body instantly made many weak spirit creatures tremble. Xiang Lu sneered at this time, glancing at the audience and the upper floor of the bar, squinting his eyes and saying, I didn't expect so many people. At this moment, a cold light shot toward Xiang Lu's face. He barely dodged it, but his left cheek was cut open. Good skill. Ghost Baby's cold voice came from not far away. Xiang Lu frowned, wiping off the blood on his face and licking the blood. When he was about to speak, a voice came from the upper floor of the bar. It was Su Zijuan's voice. Ghost baby, kill him. Ghost child. Ghost child took a step forward without saying a word. A cold light shone from his body, and the saber light behind him doubled in complexity. He shouted in a deep voice, "Yes, sir?" Before the knife light arrived, the cold air had already cut Xiang Lu's clothes. Xiang Lu's face became serious. "I didn't expect that there was a blood river evildoer here, humph." Ghost baby didn't stop. He turned into 2, and then 4, surrounding Xiang Lu in an instant. A large number of knife lights flashed, cutting Xiang Lu's body crazily at a speed and quantity that couldn't be seen by naked eyes. Only the sound of clanging could be heard. The cold light suddenly stopped, and the 4 ghost babies were united again. He pinched the small dagger with 2 fingers, looking at the ground, a pile of flesh and blood on the ground, expressionlessly. It couldn't only be described as being torn apart. Ghost baby looked up at the upper floor, saying seriously, "Mission accomplished." "No, he's not dead yet." Su Zijuan's voice came again. Ghost baby frowned. Turning around, the flesh and blood on the ground began to wriggle, gathering little by little, and recovered instantly. "He didn't kill Xiang Lu." "What the hell are you?" Ghost baby was shocked. He threw out the knife in his hand, which divided into a large number of knife lights again. "Didn't Su Zijuan tell you?" Xiang Lu sneered and raised his head. "Su Zijuan, don't worry. Why didn't you come out? Why did you let this guy deal with me? You can't hold on anymore, right? Oh, by the way, this city is still fine. You must have succeeded in suppressing Jiuzhou Shenyuan, right? But you don't have much strength, do you? I don't need to kill you myself." Ghost baby cut him into dust. "I want to see if he has the ability to regenerate." The knife light flashed again. "I remember, Ghost baby. You're the descendant of Ghost Shadow Dancer, right? You're holding Azura?" Xiang Lu sneered. "You're indeed a threat." Ghost baby didn't speak, but divided himself again. This time there were 8 figures. At this moment, when Ghost baby waved those knife lights again, the 8 figures stopped at the same time. The original figure spat out a mouthful of blood and suddenly fell to the ground. The other 7 clones disappeared without a trace. Xiang Lu calmly stood there, sneering. "I mean, under normal circumstances, you're a threat." Ghost baby raised his head with difficulty and suddenly heard a plop sound. Not only him, but the monsters hiding around also fell to the ground, showing a painful look. What did you do?" Ghost baby's face became colder and colder, and the pain became more obvious. "You don't need to know." Xiang Lu sneered. "You only need to know. Soon all of you will listen to me." After saying this, Xiang Lu shook his sleeve and a small bell appeared in his hand. Xiang Lu simply shook a few times, and those spirit creatures let out painful moans one after another. After that, they all lost consciousness and showed the whites of their eyes. Chapter 436. What the hell did you do? Ghost baby was still sober. He struggled to stand up and glared at Xiang Lu. Xiang Lu sneered and shook the bell in his hand again. Ghost baby immediately covered his head in pain. After a while, he finally lost consciousness like other monsters. "It's good that you can hold on for such a long time." Xiang Lu looked at Ghost baby with appreciation and shook the bell again. Then he waved his hand and left. "You're also a fierce general. The revival of the monster race needs talents like you. But now, go, grab everyone upstairs and bring them down." The group of demons, including Ghost Infant, silently raised their heads. Their bodies moved as they slowly walked towards the upper level. When all the monsters started to move, one monster walked towards Xiang Lu quickly. He was wearing the bartender's uniform of the Elysium Bar. He was very fat and even had a smile on his face. Lord Xiang Lu. He was the wild boar bartender of the Elysium Bar. The wild boar bartender smiled and said, "Lord Xiang Lu, according to your order, I've put all the corpse worms into the liquor and let all the monsters drink it. Of course, including Sun Shaosheng. Your corpse worms are really powerful. No one found it. You did a good job. Xiang Lu nodded with satisfaction. It's not a waste that I came back to find you first. We, the Porcupine family, have been serving the Xiang Lu family for generations, the wild boar bartender said seriously. Of course, I'll do my best to work for you. But Xiang Lu's face darkened. You still missed one. The wild boar bartender was stunned and lowered his head. Do you mean Chichi Kamaya? Sorry, Lord. Chichi Kamaya never drinks or eats. I really couldn't find a chance. But Chichi Kamaya is old and weak. He's not an obstacle. Xiang Lu shook his head and said indifferently, It doesn't matter whether the old turtle is poisoned or not. I'm talking about you. Why didn't you eat the corpse worms? Ah, sir, this. The bartender broke out in a cold sweat and said in panic, Sir, I'm working for you. He even betrayed Boss Sun. This, how can I eat the corpse bug? Xiang Lu suddenly raised his hand. The bartender saw that the situation was not good and immediately fled to the exit. But he couldn't escape from Xiang Lu's grasp. Grabbing the neck of this wild boar bartender, Xiang Lu grinned and laughed out loud. Didn't you say that you'd go through water and tread on fire for me? Then, now is the time for you to pledge your loyalty. Replenish my vitality. The wild boar bartender let out a miserable shriek as his body was swallowed by the huge snake mouth. However, a boar monster obviously couldn't satisfy Xiang Lu's needs. He casually reached out his hand and swallowed a controlled spirit creature into his mouth without any resistance. There were many demons here, and all of them were under his control. Naturally, they were food that he could take as he wished. Xiang Lu wiped the corners of his mouth, revealing a grin of satisfaction. Then he stepped into the office on the second floor of the bar with ease. Inside the office, here, a dozen monsters, including Ghost Baby, had besieged Su Zijuan. At this time, Xiang Lu grabbed another spirit creature and swallowed it. Then he squinted and said, Wow, I didn't expect to see someone here. Isn't this Lord Long? Looking at Chichi Kamaya, Su Zijuan, and the unconscious Long Shiro, Xiang Lu laughed wildly and suddenly bowed in a low voice. Lord Long, Xiang Lu is here to see you. How are you? Lord Long, why don't you speak? Xiang Lu suddenly patted his forehead and said, Oh, my eyesight is really bad. Lord Long, are you not feeling well? How about I take a look at you? Ha 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 ha. With that, Xiang Lu walked forward unscrupulously. Su Zijuan snorted, Xiang Lu, get down. Don't you dare to come closer. Xiang Lu's face darkened, and he said disdainfully, I was afraid of you a few hours ago, but now, why, how much power do you have left? Any of the little demons here can squash you to death. Su Zijuan sneered, I'll summon Juzhou Xinyuan again, and we'll die together. No matter what ambition you have, it'll disappear with the wind. No. Xiang Lu shook his head. Juzhou Xinyuan is really terrible, but you're too weak now. You can't suppress its power, but I have enough time to leave. But all the monsters here, I'm afraid they can only be buried with you. Try it. Su Zijuan stood up, waved her hand, and narrowed her eyes. She was not threatened at all. Xiang Lu suddenly said, Princess, I'll let you take Long Shiro away, but you're not allowed to interfere in my business. Of course, once I'm done with what I need to do, I'll also detoxify the corpse poison on these monsters. What do you think? Su Zijuan sneered and said, I see that you are holding that demonic spear. I think that your partner has been killed, right? Do you think your words can be trusted? I've never seen such a shameless monster like you. Xiang Lu narrowed his eyes and suddenly grabbed Ghost Baby, pinching his neck. Princess, don't you care about these guys? He's your subordinate. Xiang Lu, don't make mistakes again. If your clansmen were still alive, they would feel guilty for what you've done to Kelowna. Chichi Kamaya said in a low voice, Do you want to ruin the good reputation of Xiang Lu's clan? Chichi Kamaya, shut up. Xiang Lu suddenly shouted, What good reputation? I don't care. I only know that they all died for this monster, but what did they get in the end? A good reputation? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. What did we get with the prosperity of Xiang Lu's clan? We got you guys to drag out an ignoble existence. Look at what you've become, hiding in the human world and muddling along like timid mice. You can bear it, but I can't. Xiang Lu's clan has been exterminated for this Kelowna, and it's enough. Now I'm in charge. Chichi Kamaya, if you're sensible, you'd better follow me and I'll let you live. Otherwise, you'd better die with your princess. Long Shira's era has passed, and now it's my era. I'll start the great era of monsters. While speaking, Xiang Lu's body suddenly split open, and a large amount of flesh and blood burst out from his body, opening up the warehouse. Fortunately, this was an abandoned place, or else the panic wouldn't have stopped. 8 huge snake heads and a huge lower body. Xiang Lu had completely exposed his true form. The snake body had 9 heads, and it ate countless people. Wherever it went, it became a swamp. This was the ancient, fierce beast Xiang Lu. He only needed 1 head to become the real Xiang Lu. On the heads of different snakes, there were a large number of demons biting into them. The middle snake head slowly opened its mouth. Su Zijuan, you summon Jiuzhou Xianyuan. Let's see if you can summon faster, or I can kill these guys faster. To tell you the truth, you're weaker than me, and Long Shira is here too. Today, no matter what, I'll kill you both. Xiang Lu, do you think I don't dare? Su Zijuan's remaining monster power started to flow crazily. Let's see who is faster, you or me. All 8 heads came out. A burst of colorful light burst out, becoming more and more intense, more and more intense, and more intense. But in the end, it gradually dissipated under a sigh. Let's stop. In the ruins of the warehouse, 2 figures slowly walked out. It was the boss of the club and the will of the underground ley line. At this time, Luochio held the hand of the will of the ley line, walking into the sight of Xiang Lu and Su Zijuan. Let's stop. It wasn't Luochio's voice. It was the voice of the will of the ley line, its sigh and its pleading voice. It said, "Don't kill each other and don't continue to destroy everything here, okay?" It shed tears, golden tears, and said softly, "Every day I can hear the sounds of joy and laughter here, but now I can't hear it. Can't you hear it? The cries of the demons under your control." The voice of the will of the ley line was not loud, but it was like the wind. The sound of the wind lingered in people's ears and gradually soaked into people's hearts. It was like a comfort. Su Zijuan was shocked, while Chichi Kamaya was thinking about something, and then his face changed greatly, looking at the shadow of a child in front of him again and again. But Xiang Lu suddenly felt upset and extremely uncomfortable. The essence of a fierce beast in his body was completely activated. "Who do you think you are? Go away." Xiang Lu, who was in a rage, was the first one to react. He didn't care about all this at all. One of his snake heads suddenly opened its bloody mouth and directly stretched out to bite Luochio and the will of the ley line. But the club's boss Luo didn't move at all and just said calmly, "Yu Yi, don't let this Mr. Xiang Lu hurt our important guest." A black light suddenly drew out from the ground, like a straight line drawn in the 3-dimensional space with a black pen. No one knew where the servant girl came from. She just appeared out of thin air. Her figure flashed, and a huge snake head quietly fell and then heavily smashed on the damaged warehouse. Xiang Lu let out an extremely painful scream. Blood burst out from his broken neck, like a fountain, but the scattered blood couldn't get close to Luochio. Miss Maid landed lightly on the ground and looked at her master in the rain of blood. She smiled slightly. Under the orange sky and the blood rain, Yu Yi looked very beautiful with a smile. Chapter 437. Xiang Lu's snakehead didn't die completely. It was still struggling on the ground with part of its neck. However, it didn't struggle for long before it closed its eyes forever. The snake head turned into a pool of pus and blood, giving out an extremely stinky smell and corroding everything around. This was far more painful than the finger. Xiang Lu had 8 heads. Obviously, most of his sensitive nerves were concentrated on the 8 snake heads, and this kind of pain could make Xiang Lu unable to control his madness and ferocity. The other 7 snake heads of Xiang Lu also recognized the target, who brought him great pain. He didn't know the origin of this woman who suddenly appeared, but no matter who she was, he had to take revenge for cutting off one of his heads. He couldn't bear the hatred for another night. 7 huge snake heads, extremely long, constantly stretching and swinging necks, danced around you. These snake heads kept spraying dark green liquid. It was a highly corrosive liquid. When it fell to the ground, it was like magma falling on a piece of foam, causing it to sink in an instant. Bang, bang, boom! The crazy Xiang Lu was destroying everything that its huge snake head could hit. But no matter how crazy he was, he couldn't really touch Miss Servant Girl, even a corner of her clothes. As for the black flame, it appeared in Yu Ye's hands and turned into a black flaming sword. Miss Servant Girl ran back and forth on Xiang Lu's extremely long neck steadily, as if she was running on the ground. The black fiery sword easily cut many burnt wounds on Xiang Lu's body. Waves of painful roars came out of Xiang Lu's mouth. That was a frightening cry. All of a sudden, Luo Qiu felt the will of the ley line slightly tighten its grip on his hand. He knew what it was worried about. Boss, Luo opened the other palm. Something was gently rotating in his palm at this moment. It was an almost translucent ball. It was a small, rotating ball, like a bubble of soap water. The will of the ley line sensed it and raised its head at once. Luocho also looked down at it, smiling slightly. The ball in his hand rose and then shot into the air. It suddenly swelled up, tens of times, hundreds of times, thousands of times, until it completely covered everything in front of it. At least from the outside, it will be very quiet here. Don't worry, as you wish, this city won't feel any panic at all. When the ball covered almost half of the industrial park, the will of the ley line heard Luocho's voice, such a promise. If Miss Maid was more inclined to the powerful combat power of great destruction, then Boss Luo was more inclined to the technical things. As for his own fighting power, that would wait until someone could surpass Miss Servant Girl. Don't worry, everything will be as you wish. Luocho held the hand of the will of the ley line, leading it step by step to the front of Su Zijuan and Chichi Kamaya. Su Zijuan had seen this boss's customer, but Chichi Kamaya hadn't seen him. But he was an old man, not to mention a turtle who had lived for many years. Luocho glanced at Chichi Kamaya and suddenly said, "I have seen a creature much older than you." What? Chichi Kamaya was stunned. The old turtle obviously didn't expect that this mysterious guy would speak to him first. He could feel that Princess Su Zijuan beside him obviously knew this young man in front of him. The turtle manager of the Elysium bar didn't think that this young man in front of him was a real young man. "You, what are you doing here?" Su Zijuan's expression was uncertain, and her tone was surprised. Such a tone came from Su Zijuan's mouth, which made Chichi Kamaya guess the origin of the blade in front of him. But the moment he had this idea, an inexplicable sense of fear was born in his mind at the same time. Chichi Kamaya suddenly sweated in his turtle shell. At this time, Su Zijuan was paying attention to the battle between Xiang Lu and Miss Servant Girl. But on the other hand, she was more vigilant against this mysterious businessman in front of her. Countless possibilities were deducing in her mind. She even had to deduce the worst possibility if Xiang Lu had made a deal with him. Of course, the maid and Xiang Lu were fighting, so obviously this assumption wasn't true. But in fact, there was another possibility. That was, if Xiang Lu suddenly proposed a deal at this time, Su Zijuan didn't think this shop had any position. If there was a principal, it was willing to sell to anyone who was willing to buy. Of course, I'm here to complete the client's commission. Of course, I'm here to complete the client's commission. The boss of the club gave such an answer. He appeared in front of a client as a boss, so naturally he could only give this almost the only answer. Su Zijuan had already guessed the answer. Sure enough. Don't mess around. Su Zijuan took a deep breath. If you dare to mess around, I'll... Luochio shook his head and said indifferently, Let me see Miss Long. Saying this, Luochio held the hand of the will of the ley line, passing Su Zijuan and coming to Long Shiro. Su Zijuan was frightened and shocked at this time. Don't mess this! Why was she frightened? Frightened and confused? She couldn't move now. Her body seemed to be imprisoned by something. But it was also at this instant that she felt an enormous amount of spiritual energy from the place where she was standing, continuously pouring into her body from her legs, causing her almost exhausted demonic power to begin to regenerate, recovering at an unimaginable speed. Luochio gently held Long Shirua's hand, and there seemed to be something shining, flowing between their palms. Su Zijuan's expression was complicated. Why are you doing this? Not me. Luochio shook his head and said softly, Can't you feel it? It's a gift to you. The little light figure in front of them only had a pair of golden eyes, but it revealed sadness all the time. A familiar feeling suddenly appeared in Su Zijuan's perception. She looked at it absent-mindedly, and suddenly had a complicated and indescribable feeling. At this time, Long Shirua slowly opened her eyes. Her aura was much better. It's you. Long Shirua saw Luochio's face and slightly frowned. You are. She then saw the little figure in the light figure, and a puzzled expression flashed across her face. Then she showed great shock and disbelief. It's you? Is it you? The will of the spirit vein nodded. It reached out to Long Shirua, and Long Shirua subconsciously reached out to grab it. Thank you. The will of the spirit vein suddenly thanked Long Shirua. I didn't do anything. Long Shirua shook her head and turned her head, but she saw that her hand was still held by the boss. She said with slight dissatisfaction, Aren't you afraid that your loyal servant will be jealous? Excuse me. Luochio slightly hesitated and then let go of her hand. Although Long Shirua knew that if the boss didn't do this, she was afraid that she wouldn't wake up so quickly. But after all, there was a grudge between them. Obviously, Lord Long of the monster world had always remembered that slap. Lord Long, are you all right? Chichikamaya was pleasantly surprised at this time. Long Shirua nodded and said indifferently, It's all right, Chichikamaya. You worked hard this time. If you have anything to say, we can talk later. With that, Long Shirua suddenly narrowed her eyes. This is the root of the disaster that I left behind. Of course, the cause of today's result. This result, I will take care of it myself. She stood up and turned around. Her eyes were fixed on the front. In front of her, Miss Maid walked calmly, but her arm was dragging a figure, Xiang Lu. No one knew when the battle had stopped. The last descendant of the Xiang Lu clan, who used to have 8 gigantic bodies and made people panic, was now like a pile of mud, being casually dragged forward. When did it happen? Su Zijuan was shocked. Was it when she was injected with Reiki and her monster power began to recover? Or was it when she paid too much attention to Long Shirua's situation and neglected it? In such a short period of time, there was even no movement. It was not that she didn't have the ability to kill Xiang Lu, but to this extent, it seemed that there was still a long way to go. But Miss Maid, who had this kind of result, seemed to be indifferent to the shock of the monsters. She just casually threw the mud like Xiang Lu, and then quietly came to Boss Luo and stood behind him. Chapter 438. The sky was completely dark. After the dusk, it came to the night, a light night. In the industrial park. Xiang Lu. Long Shirua walked to Xiang Lu and said in a low voice, That day, because of the sacrifice of your clan, I pardoned your crime of slaughtering monsters. I just banished you, but I didn't expect you to repeat it. This time, I won't forgive you for your clan's contribution. Take the punishment. Winner takes all. No need to say more. Xiang Lu sneered. He didn't have the ability to stand up from the ground. Even though he supported his body with his hands, he could barely maintain the posture of lying on his stomach. He gritted his teeth and raised his head, staring at Long Shirua. "One step! Just one step! Long Shirua, you are indeed the Shinryu of Kelowna. Even luck favors you. I didn't expect that you have such a powerful helper. Humph! Kill me if you want. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you." Xiang Lu suddenly laughed wildly. "I, Xiang Lu, won't admit it even if I die." "Why?" Long Shirua sighed with a complicated expression. "Time is reincarnated. If this world can't accommodate us, we'll return to what we were. We'll return to where we came from. Don't you understand?" "Why?" Xiang Lu stared at Long Shirua. "Why?" He spat out a mouthful of blood and screamed. "Why?" Long Shirua closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She stretched out her hand and aimed at Xiang Lu. A strong power was condensing in her palm. This power was strong enough to destroy Xiang Lu Fei without any chance of revival. However, it disappeared quietly, and the great power suddenly flowed through Long Shirua's fingers. "Mississippi Long, you can't kill him." "What?" Long Shirua suddenly became angry. She stared at Luocio and said in a deep voice, "Don't you know what he has done? Look around you. The demons that had fallen to the ground. You actually want to stop me? If I don't kill him this time, how can I establish myself? How can I give justice to the other demons who have been harmed?" In the center of Long Shirua's palm, a powerful energy began to gather once more. Shinryu, who had regained her strength, possessed an unparalleled might. It was as if the wind and clouds were stirred by her. Luocio lowered his head and looked at the will of the spirit vein beside him. Then he said indifferently, "In order to complete this guest's request, no one will be sacrificed in this matter." "You!" Long Shirua was stunned. She subconsciously looked at the will of the spirit vein at this child. "You. Do you know what you are doing? If you let him go, with his character, he will only come back for you. It will only cause another disaster." The will of the spirit vein shook its head. It didn't say anything. It just looked at Xiang Lu. It suddenly grasped Luocio's hand more tightly, as if it was saying, "Please." Luocio walked toward Xiang Lu and passed by Long Shirua. He said softly, "Miss Long, I hope you won't stop me." "You can't stop me." Long Shirua gritted her teeth. She suddenly clenched her hand and waved it, but she just waved her hand. If someone had said such words to her half a year ago, she would not have said anything and would have gone straight up to teach them a lesson. But now Long Shirua laughed angrily. She pointed at the will of the spirit vein. "What a joke! What a joke! Just like me 100 years ago, it's a joke. Some guys won't remember kindness. Some guys will only bite the hand that feeds them." The will of the spirit vein lowered its head and still didn't speak. "I don't need your pity." Suddenly, Xiang Lu roared and gritted his teeth. His body suddenly swelled up. "He's going to explode." Su Zijun's expression tightened, but at the same time, she acted faster than anyone else. She said that she wouldn't remember those unreal kindness. She wasn't Long Shirua. More importantly, she had the ability to kill Xiang Lu. She also had a reason to kill Xiang Lu. This time, she wouldn't show any mercy, and she didn't intend to do it for anyone's sake. Her sharp nails were about to cut Xiang Lu's body before he exploded, but her little hand was caught by someone. That person caught her wrist. "Mississippi Zijun, please don't stop me, okay?" Luocio pressed Su Zijun's arm and then pushed Su Zijun away. He didn't use much strength, but just pushed her away a little. Along with the push, the boss raised his hand and clenched his fingers. Xiang Lu's swollen body seemed to be caught by something and began to shrink. At last, Xiang Lu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face became paler, but he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. He returned to his appearance before he exploded. Killing him before he exploded was totally different from stopping him from exploding. Xiang Lu couldn't imagine the essence of this power. It was like the ability to make one's wish come true. If it was in the West, it was the ability of God. If it was in the East, it was the ability of immortals. But he didn't think that the mysterious young man in front of him was God or immortal. He just felt a kind of nothingness. "You bastard!" Xiang Lu opened his eyes and even cracked them. His eyes were filled with extreme fear and resentment. But at this moment, Luoqiu pointed at Xiang Lu's forehead with one finger. Gently. It was like an old master pointing at a naughty child under the futon, or an old monk pointing at a little monk. Bang! For a moment, it seemed that there were endless things exploding in Xiang Lu's mind. Countless sounds and pictures poured into his consciousness, one by one. When desolation and sorrow existed at the same time, the stars moved, and the clouds gathered when laughter and crying sounded at the same time. The lights of thousands of houses changed when joy and sorrow gathered at the same time. People, monsters, and all things in this blue sky and earth, when they poured into his consciousness, he was at a loss and lost his mind. His purple eyebrows seemed to have lowered a little, and he didn't show off any more. His lips moved slightly, and he hesitated and asked subconsciously, "What is this?" "The memory of the earth is," Luoqiu said softly, "it's a gift for you." Xiang Lu instinctively looked at the little man. In the golden pupils of the little man, he saw his embarrassed and defeated appearance at this time, and he clearly saw the sigh and gentleness it transmitted to him. Gentleness for a monster like him? Are you kidding me? Xiang Lu's expression was complicated, and there was a sneer on his face to himself. I'm right. The will of the spiritual vein shed a drop of tear. Luoqiu transmitted its words, and his fingers moved slightly. "Mr. Xiang Lu, from now on, you'll be imprisoned in the depths of the spiritual vein. The aura will wash your body and soul, and wash your obsession. According to it, you won't regain your freedom until you can smile sincerely for the memory of the earth one day." The boss's hand sank, and he said indifferently, "Go down." Xiang Lu roared angrily, but his body was directly sunk into the earth. He kept sinking, and finally merged into the light spirit vein above the underground river. "I'll never be wrong." "Ah, it's just imprisonment." Long Shirwa frowned. Obviously, she was not satisfied with this treatment. "You're forgiving him in disguise." The will of the spiritual vein didn't respond. It just looked at Long Shirwa, and its golden pupils were bright and beautiful like a smile. After that, it looked up at Luoqiu, and then gently pulled the corner of Luoqiu's clothes. Luoqiu nodded, and then opened the ball, taking Yu Yi and leaving quietly in front of those monsters. "Tell me." Long Shirwa's voice sounded again, but she didn't get the answer. The boss of the club and his servant girl had left with their guests. Finally, they disappeared. With Luoqiu's departure, those monsters who fell on the ground because of Xiang Lu's disaster, or were seriously injured, or had lost their minds as long as they were dying, they slowly recovered like a miracle. The doors of the monsters were recovering at a rapid pace. Even the collapsed warehouse and the scars caused by the destruction in the industrial park were quickly recovering. It was as if nothing had happened. Is it really that? Su Zijuan quietly came to Long Shirwa, and still couldn't hide the shock on her face. Long Shirwa nodded slightly. "When it held me, I knew it." Su Zijuan couldn't help but become serious. It was born, that is to say. Chapter 439. A light and shadow landed in front of the warehouse at a very fast speed, in front of the Elysium bar. Before the light and shadow completely fell, there was a voice with a laughing tone. "Ha ha, I'm back!" "Yo, I'm back. I brought my spirit wine, quick, quick, quick." "Huh, I have a favorite." Holding an old wine jar in each of his hands, Brother Shaosheng walked over while twisting his body in a strange dance. It was not reggae, breaking, or kids hip-hop, but a strange and nondescript popping. But Brother Shaosheng quickly stopped and looked curiously. Why are there so many people? Isn't that right? The big and small monsters gathered in front of the door at this moment. They all lowered their heads and breathed loudly as if they didn't dare to do so. Brother Shaosheng was a person who was used to big occasions. The monster clan boss immediately noticed Long Shirua standing here. He blinked and said, "Ha! Isn't this old lady Long?" Brother Shaosheng suddenly covered his mouth, blinked his eyes quickly a few times, and said with a smile, "Lord Long, thank you for coming to my shop." Sun Shaosheng. Long Shirua glanced at the monkey monster indifferently and sighed, "Thank you for your monkey spirit wine." As Sun Shaosheng said, one of the old wine jars held by Sun Shaosheng flew directly into Long Shirua's hands. Sun Shaosheng was very distressed, but he couldn't show it directly. Brother Shaosheng looked at the sky. He would go to get these spirit wines, but he naturally wouldn't have such good intentions, suddenly remembering the purpose of getting the wine. Sun Shaosheng immediately found the figure of Chichi Kamaya in the group of monsters. He walked forward in 2 steps, lowered his head, and muttered, "Old turtle, where is my Zijuan? Didn't you say she would come back? Why can't I see her? The princess has left first." "Gue," Chinny said indifferently, "the matter here has been settled. The princess is a precious person, so she won't stay here." "You son of a bitch!" Sun Shaosheng suddenly grabbed Chichi Kamaya's ear and said, "Ha! So you're actually lying to me?" "No, no, no. How would this old man dare?" Chichi Kamaya felt the pain and quickly said, "Oh, right, this old man remembered that the princess has something to say to you. Tell me." Sun Shaosheng blinked his eyes again and let go of Chichi Kamaya's ear. He touched the old tortoise's chest to help him calm down. "What did you say?" This." Chichi Kamaya paused. "The princess said that you're a good person, boss. She's very happy this time and likes you. She likes me." Sun Shaosheng's mind was shaken. He felt like he was about to ascend to heaven. "I like your sense of justice." Chichi Kamaya changed the topic. Brother Shaosheng did not ascend to heaven in the end. Miss Maid had a variety of cosmetics that even Luocchio's boss Luo couldn't name all of them. The table was full of them. It had been a while. With the cosmetics on the table, Miss Maid successfully turned a figure with nothing but a pair of golden eyes into a graceful little girl. In the end, she put on a wig and a light white dress. "Okay, master." Looking at her masterpiece, Yu Yi smiled slightly. Luocchio thought that Yu Yi was very satisfied. But why a girl? Miss Maid seemed to be able to feel the boss's doubts. She said, "People often say that the earth is mother. Well, the earth has always wanted to appear in front of the world in the image of a mother. The spiritual vein will has no gender. I think it's possible to use the image of a woman." Luocchio didn't have any opinion. He smiled and said, "Anyway, you are the one who does it. Just do what you want." So Miss Maid smiled again, pushed a mirror, and then whispered to the spiritual vein well in front of her eyes. It was now a little girl temporarily. "Guest, you can open your eyes now." It opened its eyes slightly and looked at itself in the mirror. The original golden eyes turned into black and white. Yu Yi squatted behind it, pressed its shoulder gently, and said, "This is cosmetic contact covering your eyes." "Oh, yes, and the last one." Yu Yi finally put on a cute little mask embroidered with lace for it. "This is me." It looked at itself in front of the mirror blankly. It was completely unfamiliar with itself. It was very puzzled. Must it be like this? It looked at Luocchio blankly. Luocchio just smiled and stretched out his hand. The spiritual vein will took the initiative to stretch out its hand and put it in Luoccio's palm. It needed to rely on the boss's body all the time to maintain its current form. Taking shape, the boss looked at Yu Yi and whispered, "So, let's go." "Yes, master." Luocchio pushed open the door of the club, holding the hand of the spiritual vein will, and walked to the shop street where the club was located. After the chaos during the day subsided, the traffic was chaotic for a while. But at night, When the situation did not worsen, but stopped abruptly, the forgetful people would quickly throw their time into pleasure. Of course, the main reason was there was an institution like the government that could calm the people. I heard that a huge pit with a diameter of more than 30 meters was found in the first section of the East River. It suddenly cracked. No wonder it made such a big noise. I also read the report. Some geographers invited by the government speculated that the reason for the earthquake and the emergence of so many rats was that they felt fear. The nature of small animals, it was a false alarm. Yes, but I really didn't expect that there would be a sinkhole in our place. People were talking. The hottest topic today was naturally the chaos during the day. Luaccio held its hand and walked among the people. Yuyi, who had changed into plain clothes, walked on the other side. They and it were like a young family. Hearing people's discussion, it suddenly raised its head. It could only see Luaccio's chin. Luaccio lowered his head and smiled. If you can explain something with the explanation of the past, people probably won't think in a more strange place. It tilted its head and then nodded. It didn't have a mouth, but it could talk. So the use of the mask was reflected. Where are we going now? Luaccio touched its head and said, Where do you want to go? Go. It seemed to be thinking hard. No one would look at them strangely, even in a place with so many people, in a large square in the city, because they were like a young couple leisurely strolling through the streets with their little daughter. Although this little girl was wearing a mask, she was wearing a light white dress and a pair of small flat shoes. She looked very cute. It suddenly asked, What is he doing? Luaccio glanced at it and said, This? A magic show on the street. Then it asked curiously, What about this? Well, this is called a shooting game. If you hit the balloon, you can get a prize. Do you want to play? It blinked its eyes. Okay. I hit it. It jumped with joy. This is the prize. Luaccio put the plush doll in its hands, and it immediately hugged it with both hands. Luaccio thought that if it had a smile, it would be more lovely. It stopped in front of a small stall selling ice cream. Yuyi squatted down and looked at it. Do you want to eat it? It shook its head. The boss asked the servant girl to buy 3 rolls, and then they sat together on the bench in the square. Luaccio patted her face, and it felt something different on its face. It was a mouth. Although it's just for a while and you can't eat anything, at least the taste is okay. Luaccio whispered. The servant girl didn't eat anything, but at this time, she was slowly eating the original ice cream. Someone suddenly walked past them and took a picture of them without greeting them. It suddenly became scared and looked at the passerby in bewilderment. The passerby smiled and walked over with a little embarrassment. He was holding a Polaroid in his hand and handed the photo over. I'm sorry, both of you. I'm a photographer, and now I'm shooting a theme about happiness. Seeing you here, I couldn't help but take a photo. A passerby. The photographer handed the finished photo to it. Its eyes stayed on the photo, and it saw its appearance. It shouldn't have an appearance, and there was nothing in the world that could keep its appearance. But it knew that it was because of Luaccio. In the photo, it leaned between the two. Was that a smile? That was a smile. Suddenly, there was another burst of flashes. The photographer pressed the shutter again and smiled. This photo is for you. I'll take this one. Then I won't disturb you. Thank you. Luaccio watched the photographer leave, and then looked at it, whispering, Where else do you want to go? Well, the park. It put on the mask again. Then it put the photo under its skirt. Longshore sat at the top of the warehouse of the Elysium bar, overlooking the city. The bright lights seemed to make her happier than the bottle of monkey spirit wine in her arms. It should be so, but the question she asked couldn't be erased from her heart. Why? Why do you have to do this? Longshore drank a mouthful of spirit wine, wiping the traces on the corners of her mouth, and muttered to herself, What Shinryu? Can't he solve such a small problem? She was drunk alone. The monsters below were happy. Squeak! That was the sound of the iron chain rubbing on the hook when the swing in the park shook. It sat on the small wooden board, with the plush doll in its arms, and it held the iron chain with both hands. Behind it, Luaccio was pushing the swing for her. The little girl's feet were long and straight, pointing to the night sky, laughing happily. "I've always wanted to play like this." It turned its head back when it was being swung, and its laughter never stopped. "Really?" But its voice suddenly became gloomy. "I thought I never had a chance." "Long Shirua may not do anything to you in the end," Luaccio suddenly said. It shook its head, looking at the night sky. "She has been with me for a long time. I know her. She is the child of the earth, and she has a lot of things on her shoulders. She has created enough time for me, but there are some things that neither of us can change." It said in an almost narrating tone, "Isn't it ironic? Leyline is born from the earth, and it nourishes the earth. Where there is leyline, there is Reiki. The land would become fertile, and the living beings would naturally become happy. No matter how the stars change, as long as there is leyline, everything will be fine." But it shook its head. Leyline shouldn't have its own will. Leyline with its own will has a chance to live. Just like monsters become monsters, we will become similar things. We will leave this land, take everything here, everything. The swing suddenly stopped. It had stopped on its own accord. It walked down, turned around, took off the mask on its body, dispersed all the disguises on its body, and returned to its original appearance, light and shadow. "So, someone like me shouldn't exist. Thank you." Golden tears began to drip from its golden eyes, and its body slowly flew into the night sky. "Thank you for letting me out of the seal. Thank you for stopping this incident for me, and let this city, all the people in the city, and the monsters have a brand new tomorrow." Luaccio silently watched it rise into the air. Very bright, very bright, very bright. The last deal. It raised its head and spread its arms. Let me never appear again. Let it lie quietly on this piece of land, never to have any consciousness ever again. Let me always, always nourish this land." Luaccio faced it with the strongest interest and slowly nodded. "Customer, I have received your wish. Thank you for taking me out to play this night. Thank you for the gifts you gave me, the delicious food you gave me, the swing you pushed me. Let me. I am so happy." Finally, a light spot suddenly rose in the sky until it reached the limit, like a shooting star flying out from the ground. Then, under the night sky, above the thousands of lights, a layer of bright light appeared. The light suddenly cracked, and in an instant, colorful light spots burst out from it, scattering all over the city. It was like an incomparably dazzling display of fireworks. It was supposed to be a very quiet night, but the trees regained their vitality, and the flowers suddenly bloomed overnight. The people in the city felt a moment of peace, and the people in the hospital bed didn't seem to be in pain anymore, falling asleep with smiles. The lingering people raised their heads and hovered under this marvelous display of fireworks. A doubtful voice, "Is someone celebrating?" A guessing voice, "Someone is celebrating." A sigh, "You are so silly." A joyful voice, "Ah, music, music. I am suddenly so happy." An innocent voice, "Mom, look, there are fireworks." There were many, many different voices. When the firework finally went out, the city was full of flowers. That was the gift of the earth, the last gift it left to the world. In the park, Luaccio looked at the swing where it used to sit, where there was a plush doll and a photo. In the photo, it had such a smile, Luaccio said softly. Miss Maid suddenly squatted down, picked up something from the ground, and gave it to Luaccio. Boss Luo smiled slightly, reached out and carefully picked it up and looked at it under the night sky. "Let's plant it," Luaccio said with a hint of expectation. "Plant it next to the gem flower. I don't know what it is, but I have a hunch that it will be very beautiful." Chapter 440. In a certain section of the underground river, Long Shirua stood in the middle of the ley line and the river. She looked at the aura like the Milky Way quietly and took a sip of the monkey spirit wine. This kind of spirit wine was not suitable for drinking in large mouthfuls. She had been here for a long time. Is Xiang Lu really unable to come out? Su Zijuan came behind Long Shiro and looked at the huge spiritual vein. She could see a figure bound by a lot of chains and struggling in the depth of the vein. Long Shiro said indifferently, "Your Jiuzhou Xianyuan or my Shinryu golden body should be able to cut these chains, but it's not necessary." Compared to imprisoning Xiang Lu, they would rather let this disaster disappear forever. The relationship between Long Shiro and it was more intimate than that of Su Zijuan. Therefore, Su Zijuan knew that Long Shiro was respecting its will. It's too easy for him. Su Zijuan sneered and shook her head. "I've repaired the part of the first seal point that belongs to me. You can go there when you have time. I'm going to the second seal point now." Long Shiro nodded. The human government has sent a lot of researchers to the riverbed to study the so-called sinkhole. There are too many methods for human science and technology to explore. Be careful, don't let others find you. "I won't let humans find me," Su Zijuan said indifferently. Long Shiro lowered her head and didn't say anything. She raised the wine jar and drank a mouthful. This wine was not suitable for drinking. But Kelowna's Shinryu was not afraid of the huge aura of this kind of drinking. She was more willing to let the aura wash her body. Maybe this was the only way to show her strength. But Long Shiro suddenly frowned and turned around. Su Zijuan turned around with her. They saw the uninvited guests at the same time. At least for them, they were indeed uninvited guests. The boss of the club and Mississippi maid were always with him. "Mississippi Long, Mississippi Zijuan, you are also here." Luocho came forward. The water of the underground river built a long suspended water ladder for him and Yu Yi. "It's gone. What are you doing here?" Long Shiro said coldly. Luocho looked up at the huge light source above his head, the body of the ley line, and said softly, "Of course, I'm here to deliver the final product." "Sure." Su Zijuan turned her head. Although she had guessed that the club would intervene in this matter because of the benefits behind it, she obviously didn't like to be able to confirm the answer. Su Zijuan said, "What's its final hope?" Luocho said calmly, "It hopes that this ley line will never give birth to any consciousness in the future." "I'm going to the second seal." Su Zijuan didn't look back and directly left this place. She left in a hurry, as if she didn't want to see the next scene. "Mississippi Zijuan, your injuries are all healed. It's time to pay the transaction fee," Luocho suddenly reminded her. Su Zijuan still didn't look back. She said coldly, "I'll find you. Don't worry. Su Zijuan, never owe anyone anything." Luocho smiled and then looked at Long Shiro. Long Shiro drank another mouthful of monkey spirit wine, but moved aside a little. She silently watched Luocho and Yu walk past her, and finally approached the edge of the ley line. When the club's boss reached out his hand, Long Shiro suddenly shouted, "Wait! Mississippi Long, is there a problem?" Luocho turned around and asked. Long Shiro said in a low voice, "Can you really guarantee that the ley line won't give birth to consciousness again?" Luocho thought for a while and shook his head. "I can only guarantee that it won't give birth again before other customers pay a higher price. After all, it can't afford the transaction fee to kill any possibility." Long Shiro suddenly sneered and said in a very sarcastic tone, "The nature of a businessman." Boss Luo didn't say anything. The moment his hand touched the ley line, he seemed to be sucked into the ley line and finally entered the depths of the ley line. At least, there were only Long Shiro and Miss Maid left. Long Shiro didn't feel embarrassed, just uncomfortable. Miss Maid was neither. Facing this Kelowna Shinryu, she smiled. Long Shiro suddenly turned around and said before leaving, "Please tell your master when he comes out. No matter what, thank him for bringing some memories to it." "Mississippi Long," Miss Maid suddenly called Long Shiro. Long Shiro frowned and turned around. "What's the matter?" "It's like this." Yu Yi smiled. Mississippi Long, if you have time, you can learn more about physics. What the hell? Long Shirwa gave a start, then shook her head and snorted. It's none of your business. Mind your own business. Sorry, Yu Yi said softly. Long Shirwa turned into a golden light and left. About half an hour later, Luochio got out of the ley line. Miss Maid was still waiting quietly on the water ladder. Luochio smiled. I'm a bit reluctant to leave this place. I'm afraid that I won't be able to see the memories of this land in the future. Luochio let the water ladder descend, and then came to the edge of the underground river with Yu Yi. Boss Luo squatted down and stretched out his hands to scoop water from the unusually cold river into a bottle. After a bottle was filled, the owner smiled in satisfaction and said, Take this back and use it to water the plants. The town was very quiet. There was a river here which used to be the place where the residents of the town lived. Of course, the water was no longer drinkable now. Until now, the only thing that flowed out was for the housewives nearby to wash clothes. As usual, Sen-Er, a widow from the village, brought her 4-year-old daughter to the riverside and started washing clothes. Sen-Er ran a tofu shop alone. Since her husband died in an accident 2 years ago, she took on the responsibility of raising her daughter. Sen-Er was not particularly beautiful, but she had the watery spirit of a southern girl. At first glance, she was comfortable, but when you looked at her again, you would feel that she was gentle, and then you would discover her beauty. Mom, can I see Goddess Duomi later? Well, let's see if you are obedient later. If you are not obedient, you won't be able to see it. Sen-Er patted her daughter's head. Of course, her daughter nodded seriously, and then sat on the stone stairs by the river, hugging her knees with both hands. This kind of ancient town, built by the river, was a typical old town in the south. Sen-Er would not wash clothes in the same place as the other housewives. She would only take her daughter to a place that was farther away and quieter. When Sen-Er put down the basin, her daughter suddenly pointed to the front and said, Mom, there's someone in the water. Oh, it's really him. Sen-Er looked over and really saw a figure floating over the water. Sen-Er's heart jumped, and she carried her daughter away. Then she found a bamboo on the ground and picked up the figure in the water. When the person leaned on the stone stairs by the river, Sen-Er hesitated for a while, and then she plucked up the courage to put her hand on the person's wrist. Not dead! Not dead! Fortunately, Sen-Er did not know why she was so happy. Probably because she was afraid that the person she fished up had died, or something else. Sen-Er flipped the man over forcefully. She could see that he was a man in his 30s. His hair was long, but it was tied up. There were some roots on his face. He looked a little down. It was not a face that she usually saw. It was like a foreigner's face. There was a big hole in the clothes on the chest, but there was no wound. But when Sen-Er helped him up, the strange man suddenly opened his eyes and raised his head. Sen-Er was surprised. You missed me. Are you okay? Chapter 441. Sen-Er grew up in this town. She didn't continue to go to college after graduating from high school. She got married at a young age and gave birth to a child. Most of the women around her were like this. Most of the women in this town were like this. Sen-Er originally thought that her life would continue to be peaceful like this. She felt that the biggest change in her life was the death of her husband. That was the change that almost changed her fate. But she was still in this town. Although her fate changed, her life didn't change much. Of course, there were some unpleasant and even sad things occasionally, such as the matchmaker who occasionally came to propose marriage, or the gossip she occasionally heard. Of course, there were also happy things, such as her daughter Xiaoji growing up day by day. She could call her mother, help with the housework, and draw her mother, herself, and sunflowers on white paper with crayons. Therefore, there was not much change in life, because the unhappy and the happy were all canceling each other out. Because of this, Sen-Er never thought that she would pick up a man from the river when she was washing clothes. What's more, it was a foreigner. I live in this town. Sen didn't intend to reveal too many things to the foreign man, such as her name, where she lived, and who she was. This. Sen looked around. This is Whitewater Town. Whitewater Town. The man frowned and soon shook his head. I can't remember. I haven't heard of it. Well, let's not talk about this first. You should have fallen into the water. Do you have family or friends nearby? I'll help you contact them. Sen said directly. Family, friends? The man suddenly closed his eyes and shook his head, seeming to be a little uncomfortable. I can't remember. Sen and her daughter looked at each other. The little girl didn't seem to understand what happened, but Sen thought, could it be that he had amnesia? This foreign man. Sen hesitated and said, can you remember your name? Where do you live? The man thought seriously for a while and finally frowned. I don't know. I can't remember. Sen felt that this man's eyes seemed to have a kind of magical power. She had never seen such beautiful eyes in her life. Perhaps it was because he was a foreigner that the color of his eyes was different from the people she usually saw, and this man's Mandarin unexpectedly made Sen feel that it was very standard. Perhaps he was a foreigner who had lived in the country for a long time? You really can't remember? Sen looked at him carefully and asked, Do you have an ID card or something on you? Or something else? Where's your phone? My body. The man was stunned for a moment before he started searching for his clothes. Suddenly, this strange foreign man's eyes kept moving, as if he was looking for something. Gone, where is it? What are you looking for? Sen hugged her daughter tightly and looked at the strange foreign man who seemed to be eagerly looking for something. She asked subconsciously. The man suddenly stopped and looked at Sen in confusion. I don't know, but I want to find it. But I can't remember what it is. But I know it's very important to me, very important. Then can you remember what it looks like? Sen asked hesitantly. Very long, Red. No, what is it? The foreign man frowned and covered his forehead, as if he was a little unsteady. Finally, the man sighed and shook his head. Sorry, I can't remember. Sen thought for a while and suggested, How about you go to the police station with me first? Maybe the police can help you. The foreign man nodded. The town was not very big. Soon they could see the entrance of the police station. Sen didn't get too close to the man who floated from the river, but even so, she still received a lot of stares. The neighbors looked at her strangely. After all, this man was a foreigner. Although there were foreigners who came here for sightseeing these years, it was not like a big city where they could see everywhere. And walking with her. Well, the police station is in front. Sen pointed, and then suddenly said, You can go in by yourself. The police here are very nice. You can tell them your situation, and I think they should be able to help you. The man suddenly frowned. Don't you go in? Sen said directly, It's too late, I have to go home. With that, Sen took her daughter Xiaoji's hand, lowered her head and turned into an alley. She had looked back, but it was just a look, because she didn't want her life to change again. The man looked at Sen disappearing figure, and then looked at the entrance of the police station blankly. He suddenly frowned, and there was a strange feeling that he couldn't explain at present. It seemed that he was instinctively unwilling to step into this place. He also looked around himself, looking at those who quietly cast their gazes at him. He didn't like these gazes at the same time, gazes of attention. The man frowned and suddenly moved. He turned into the alley where Sen had left. His footsteps were very fast, and he soon disappeared. While reading the newspaper, Chichi Kamaya hammered his shoulder. He was already an old man. Besides, Chichi Kamaya had just experienced a thrilling thing, so he felt a bit excited. It's like what happened yesterday. The manager of the Elysium bar thought. It happened yesterday. The bartender sitting next to Chichi Kamaya was stunned at this time. Isn't it? Chichi Kamaya could only flip through the newspaper. Manager, come, have a drink. The bartender felt that he might have said something wrong, so he quickly served a cup of tea. Chichi Kamaya, who was using the lid of the teacup to cut the tea leaves, took a sip, and then he recovered some peace. It's so good to have a quiet day. Chichi Kamaya sighed comfortably and suddenly asked curiously, "What is that?" The bartender followed Chichi Kamaya's gaze and looked at several vertical steel pipes on the bar's dance floor. "Oh," the boss said, "to get a few steel pipes for pole dancing." "Really?" Chichi Kamaya nodded and immediately wondered, "But why is this one so ugly?" It was like a rusty fire stick, black and dark, but it was much longer than the fire stick. "I don't know. I picked it up at the door in the morning." The bartender shrugged and said, "The boss said to put 4 pipes, but I only found 3, so I used this thing first. Manager, I will find a suitable one and change it immediately." Chichi Kamaya shook his head and said, "No need. Anyway, Sun Shaosheng is just interested in it for a while, and he will forget it later. It was a little ugly, but it was also a little thin. But those monsters don't know how to pole dance. So don't waste it. Just use it. Young people really don't know how to save at all." The bar didn't dare to use this guy to call the bar owner who paid his salary, but he didn't want to offend Chichi Kamaya, so he quickly smiled and said, "You are right. Let's just make do with it." This time only Su Zijuan walked in alone. The club owner, who was watering a small potted plant, wasn't surprised that the little butterfly monster didn't come with him this time. Yu Yi smiled and nodded. "Miss Zijuan, welcome. Let's not talk about useless things." Su Zijuan looked around the club and said straightforwardly, "Get ready to go out. I will take you to the tomb." As early as when Su Zijuan said that this tomb was the transaction fee, Boss Luo had already known the truth of this tomb through the altar. Without Su Zijuan's presence, others couldn't even find it, let alone open it. Of course, this didn't include the club. It was just that the evil soul in this tomb was the transaction fee. If the customer was willing to open it himself, Boss Luo would naturally not waste more effort. "Yu Yi, you take care of the shop. I will go with Miss Zijuan," Luochio ordered casually. Listening to Luochio's words, Su Zijuan immediately turned around and said indifferently, "We will go out to sea by water. I will wait for you at the bottom of the East River Bridge. You go and prepare yourself. It will take at least 4 or 5 days to go back and forth." "Miss Zijuan," Luochio suddenly shouted. "Is there anything else?" Su Zijuan frowned and seemed to be impatient. Luochio smiled and said, "Don't bother." Everything in front of her was dark, cold, and gloomy. When she came to herself, Su Zijuan found that she was already at the bottom of the gloomy water. She could even clearly feel that her tomb was not far from here. She came here, quietly. This was much scarier than Longshuruo's, so near, yet poles apart. And she couldn't see any burden on the club's boss when he was taking a person with him. And now he was looking at the sea creatures in the deep sea. "Is this an anglerfish?" The boss looked at it with interest. "Yen, yen, 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 PS1. Plus 1 PS2. I also received the 3rd item, but I still won't give in. Well, the red date milk is unexpectedly delicious." Chapter 442. Su Zijuan didn't feel it strange, even though there were a lot of rare creatures in the shallow sea and some species that had never been discovered by humans. So she couldn't understand why the boss of the club was so interested in it, as if it was the first time he saw it. He crossed the land and the sea and came to the deep sea with just a thought. How could a guy with such a miraculous ability not see these things? Su Zijuan didn't understand the mysterious boss of the club more and more. Of course, she didn't think about understanding him. She just planned to stay away from him as much as possible after the deal was done. This shop was indeed very convenient. People could get whatever they wanted in an instant by paying a little price. It seemed so. However, after living for so many years, Su Zijuan didn't think that this kind of business was a good thing in essence. "If you want to take photos, can you wait until you come here?" Su Zijuan finally couldn't hold back her impatience. "Sorry." Luochio apologized, Because it's the first time I see it, I forgot myself. Well, this is indeed a good place. Of course, for Boss Luo, who was a paleontology major, the species in the deep sea naturally had some things that were worthy of his attention. First time? Who was he kidding? Su Zijuan didn't believe this nonsense at all. She snorted and went in a certain direction in the deep sea. Luoqiu followed her. Strictly speaking, the seabed where the tomb was located didn't belong to the real deep-sea area, but there didn't seem to be any resources that were worth human exploitation. But the boss saw some shipwrecks. There seemed to have been a fierce sea battle here. "Are you going to take photos again?" Su Zijuan asked directly. Luoqiu smiled, but his eyes fell on the front. Although there was no light source here, he unexpectedly saw some blue fluorescent light spots. Probably some kind of deep-sea mayfly creatures that hadn't been discovered yet. There was a huge trench in front, narrow at both ends but spacious in the middle. Although the edge of the trench had been eroded by the sea for many years and looked like the wrinkles of an old man, it could still be seen that it was in a straight line. It looked like an extremely flat rhombus. There are many skeletons here as well. Luoqiu stood at the edge of the deep trench and stared down. He asked curiously, "The skeletons below don't look like ordinary sea creatures." Su Zijuan said indifferently, "That's a sea demon, a type of sea demon. Since ancient times, there have always been sea demons wreaking havoc near the coastline of Kelowna." Luoqiu suddenly said, "In modern times it seems to have disappeared. At least the human satellites didn't capture any strange creatures." Su Zijuan glanced at Luoqiu indifferently. For some unknown reason, the sea demons began to go extinct first. 700 years ago, a sea demon king was born in the deep sea. Under the leadership of the sea demon king, the sea demons tried to invade the land for unknown reasons. So a large-scale war broke out between the cultivators, the sea demons, and the native sea demons of Kelowna. After that war, the human cultivators began to decline. So did the demon race, and the sea demons were almost completely wiped out. Su Zijuan shook her head. "Let's not talk about it. Anyway, if you want to know, you should know. Go down, don't waste time." After saying this, Su Zijuan directly jumped into the deep trench without waiting for Luoqiu to speak. Boss Luo stared blankly, but didn't continue to ask. Luoqiu felt that he couldn't say, "If you tell me I don't need to waste resources to buy information." The trench was like a battlefield that had been magnified countless times. Many huge skeletons were buried here, but almost all of them were buried in the mud, and only a small part of them was exposed. Even so, it was enough for people to imagine the original size of these skeletons. Su Zijuan found that the club boss stopped again. This guy, was he here for a vacation? Luoqiu stopped in front of a pile of exposed bones, and even waved his hand to separate the mud from the pile of bones. "Do you want to get the thing or not?" Su Zijuan suddenly became impatient. People always say that the one who owes money is the boss, but this great demon Lady Su Zijuan felt that she was the one who begged him to get the debt. "Miss Zijuan, don't you think these two skeletons are very interesting?" Luoqiu said softly, "Two skeletons?" Su Zijuan stared blankly, frowning. "Aren't they just a pile of broken bones? What's so interesting about them?" Luoqiu said calmly, "Although we don't know what they looked like when they still had flesh and blood, and also don't know what they would do when they were alive. But at least what we can see now is that even after being dead for 700 years, their bones are still entangled together. It was like the bones of some kind of snake, but with many more strange structures. But overall, it was still in the shape of a long strip. The two sets of bones, which should have been independent individuals, were now tightly entangled together. Even after being dead for 700 years, they are still holding each other tightly." Luoqiu said softly, "Isn't it good to live and die together?" Su Zijuan suddenly sneered. "How do you know this is living and dying together? Why can't it be that they are gnawing at each other until they die?" "Monsters." Luoqiu suddenly said, If they are of the same race, will they also devour each other? From the looks of their skeletons, they should be of the same race. Su Zijuan had no way to refute this fact, but she was also unwilling to go along with this boss's wishes. She said indifferently, maybe they are brothers, maybe they are father and son. In any case, they are already like this. Can you still restore them to their original state and distinguish their relationship? Probably. Luocio looked at the two entangled skeletons and suddenly approached them, coming to the bottom of their bodies, in the place where a large number of bone spurs were hidden. Luocio carefully cleaned up the surrounding mud. Sure enough, Su Zijuan couldn't help but be curious. She approached and saw that among these bone spurs, there was an even smaller skeleton. This is their child. Luocio raised his head and looked up at the skulls of the two huge skeletons. Su Zijuan suddenly had an indescribable irritation, as if someone had stabbed her heart with something. It was uncomfortable. She subconsciously said, "What? Even if they loved each other when they were alive and hugged when they died, does it still cause you, a mercenary businessman, to pity the state of the universe?" "I'm just thinking." Luocio withdrew his gaze. What would they be like at that time? Looking at Luocio's indifferent gaze, Su Zijuan suddenly became absent-minded. She didn't sink into it, but she suddenly realized something very clearly. He didn't look at the skeletons of these sea monsters from the perspective of the monster race as she did. He also didn't see everything in this battlefield and the burial ground from the perspective of the sea monsters. He also didn't look at the battle between races like human beings. There was no pity or sympathy, only a trace of regret, as if it wasn't because of the loss of life. He was like a person outside the bottle, looking at everything in the bottle. An inexplicable sense of fear suddenly shrouded Su Zijuan's whole body, making her seem to see an abyss deeper than the trench at the bottom of the sea. "Let's go. You're not in a hurry, but I am." Su Zijuan's heart suddenly quivered, and her voice was a bit deep and anxious. Seeing Su Zijuan continue to move forward, Luocio didn't say anything but turned around, facing the two big skeletons and one small skeleton. He stretched out his hand and let their skeletons sink, letting the mud cover them again. Chapter 443. Of course, this small episode didn't bring the relationship between the shop owner and the customer closer. Instead, it made Su Zijuan more afraid of the shop owner. Before reaching the destination, Su Zijuan didn't stop, nor did she say anything to Boss Luo. Now, Boss Luo, who had a strong immunity to embarrassment, looked around along the way and felt quite good, probably because he was good at finding his own fun. "We're here." Su Zijuan suddenly stopped. Her feet stepped on the place in front of her, where the bones of the sirens who died 700 years ago were relatively less scattered. Su Zijuan didn't seem to want to explain anything. She just closed her eyes and opened her hands. She didn't talk nonsense and directly opened the tomb. Luocio could see that at this time, around the place where he and Su Zijuan were standing, there are a total of 12 huge black pillars sticking out from the bottom of the mud. The top of the pillars was conical. When these pillars stretched to the limit, they suddenly tilted towards the center at the same time. The many conical tops of the pillars finally merged into one place. At this time, from the most central point of their convergence, a colorful light was projected, shooting into the mud under Luocio and Su Zijuan's feet. The mud seemed to have changed into another substance in an instant, and it began to rotate. As a result, a slowly rotating vortex appeared. "Go in," Su Zijuan said indifferently, and at the same time moved her feet directly into the center of the vortex, and her body sank without any accident. Then Luocio. This was a dark red space, and it seemed that there was no end to it, because this was not a space with a square sky and a square earth. It was more like a spherical space, very big, very big. Luocio and Su Zijuan should be in the center of this spherical space, and around them There were light balls of various forms, which were the evil souls of the sirens. This was the battlefield of the sirens 700 years ago. A large number of sirens died here. Their souls didn't disperse after death, but turned into evil souls because of their strong resentment. This should be a very troublesome and urgent problem after the war. Therefore, there was a tomb to bury these evil souls. More interestingly, when Su Zijuan opened the tomb, Boss Luo found some traces similar to the club's critical door. It didn't mean that this place had the same nature as the critical door, but the 12 pillars and the tomb seemed to use some of the technology of the critical door. Miss Zijuan, did you build this tomb? Luoqiu, looking at the floating evil souls, one after another. After 700 years, they were cut off from all contact with the outside world and basically homogenized to the same level. They weren't particularly powerful or eye-catching, but there were a lot of them. 30,000 who said it wasn't a lot. I used an ancient technology to build this. Only I can open it. Su Zijuan glanced at Luoqiu indifferently. Is there a problem? Is it the technology of the royal family of Shenyuan? Luoqiu asked. Su Zijuan was stunned, frowning, and suddenly said, What? Can this kind of technology also be used as transaction fee? This time, it was Boss Luo's turn to be stunned. Luoqiu was rarely stunned, but Su Zijuan's thoughts still disturbed his train of thought. This wasn't the answer he wanted. Luoqiu finally shook his head. I'm afraid not. Of course, it doesn't mean that the technology can't be used as transaction fee, but the premise is that the technology must be created by the customer. And the technology of creating this tomb space came from us. Su Zijuan suddenly became furious. You're wrong. Why would the royal family of Shenyuan make a deal with you? Miss Zijuan? Luoqiu didn't say anything, but just called her name softly. No matter what she said, Su Zijuan, who was here to pay the transaction fee, fell silent. She snorted coldly. I'm not the same. Luoqiu smiled. Of course, the technology came from our shop, but I can see that it has been improved a lot. You've put in a lot of effort. Are you going to take it or not? Luoqiu turned around and waved his hand. In an instant, the 22,000 evil souls, not one more, not one less, not one more, not one less, suddenly shot into his palm like fireflies. Boss Luo's palm seemed to have a bottomless hole. No matter how many evil souls it swallowed, it would never be full. Luoqiu put his palms together, saying indifferently, Miss Zijuan, thank you for your patronage. The 22,000 evil souls have been collected. Su Zijuan's face suddenly darkened, looking at Luoqiu with a complicated expression. However, right at this moment, the remaining evil souls in this dark red space suddenly began to circle around. They circled Luoqiu and Su Zijuan crazily, turning into a huge tornado. On the surface of this tornado of evil souls, the face of a ferocious, roaring beast could be vaguely seen. Luoqiu, who was in the tornado, looked at it with interest, while Su Zijuan snorted coldly. Su Zijuan snorted. It's been 700 years and you still haven't changed? Then you'll be imprisoned for another 700 years. After saying that, Su Zijuan's eyes flashed with a red light, and the entire dark red space was filled with countless roars. Those were the roars of unwillingness and madness. But the tornado gradually dispersed, and the evil souls left the tornado one by one, returning to their original floating state. In this tomb, all the evil souls had a mark that only Su Zijuan could serve. She was like a supreme god in this place, and had absolute control over every single evil soul. So, no matter how these evil souls rebelled, Su Zijuan wasn't afraid. So, when she saw Luoqiu collect the 22,000 evil souls, her expression became serious, because the moment the evil souls were collected, the mark was already gone. Building the tomb was a huge project in itself, and it consumed a lot of manpower and resources. If it wasn't the Shenyuan royal family, it was impossible to find anyone who had such a foundation. But these 22,000 evil souls, 22,000 imprints, where this kind of method was almost heaven-defying. There are still 8,000 evil souls here. Luocho smiled at this time. If Miss Zijuan still needs anything, the shop's door is always open for you. Su Zijuan looked at Luocho from head to toe, and after a while she said, "Let me ask you, do you know Penglai?" Luocho was startled, and after thinking for a while, he said, "The Penglai that Miss Zijuan is talking about is at the Penglai city in Shandong." "If it's that place, do I need to ask you?" Su Zijuan couldn't help but get angry. She didn't know why she wanted to get angry when she saw this guy. She really wanted to get angry. She got angry when she saw him stop to take pictures. She got angry when he said that they would live and die together. She got angry. But she suppressed her anger and took a deep breath. The Penglai that I'm talking about is one of the oldest legends in the land of the 9 prefectures. Legend has it that there are immortals in Penglai, and as long as you can find Penglai, no matter who you are, you can fulfill your wish. So let me ask you, can you open it? No matter who you are, you can fulfill your wish. No matter who you are, you can buy what you want. Isn't it a bit similar? Su Zijuan looked at Luocho rather nervously, only to see that this club's boss was silent at this moment, and the two just looked at each other like this for a long time. Luocho suddenly shook his head. "Miss Zijuan, I don't know about the Penglai that you're talking about, but if you want to know, you can buy information about it. As for opening it, there's no problem at all. It can actually be opened." Su Zijuan's eyes lit up, and she asked directly, "How many?" Luocho looked around the tomb and slowly said, "Using the total number of 30,000 evil souls in this tomb as a reference, another 10 million should be enough." 10 million? Su Zijuan suddenly raised her head and said in disbelief, "That's 100 million, 1 billion, 10,000. Su Zijuan suddenly counted with her fingers, and then said angrily, 30 billion evil souls? What a joke! Even during the heyday of the ancient demon race, there weren't so many evil souls on the ground and under the sea. It's impossible for there to be so many. Miss Zijuan, it should be 300 billion. Su Zijuan roared and said fiercely, "My math is bad. I'm really sorry." It was really bad. Chapter 444. The minute hand of the old pendulum clock in the club had just made one circle when Su Zijuan, who was far away from the boss and the customer, appeared again. The boss was still the same boss, but the customer who came back again didn't look as good as before. Like a pressure cooker that was stewing something, he was constantly emitting a kind of aura. "I'm going to explode," Su Zijuan suddenly muttered under her breath. "It's impossible to take out 300 billion evil spirits. This is just an excuse that you can't do, saying that you can buy anything. It's really just a bluff." Luocho just smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't intend to respond at all. "Miss Zijuan, it's still early. Do you want to sit down and have a drink?" "No need." Su Zijuan glared at Luocho and strode towards the door. Seeing Su Zijuan leave, Yu came to the boss and said regretfully, "Oh, I just made a drink that looks like blood. I was going to let Miss Zijuan taste it." "You can make this?" Luocho asked curiously. Yu Yi smiled. "I just tried. It's a bit difficult to make it in the traditional way, but it's possible to make it in molecular cuisine." "Okay." The boss was in a good mood because he had just received a big transaction fee of 22,000 evil souls. It was indeed a big transaction fee. Since there was nothing to do, Luocho said with interest, "Let's go cook. You can be my assistant today, but don't laugh at me." Long Shirua was repairing her part of the second seal. When she was halfway through, she saw Su Zijuan walking towards her with a frown. "Didn't you say that you would leave for at least 4 or 5 days? Why are you back?" Long Shirua stopped and asked curiously. Su Zijuan found a stone and sat on it. She said offhandedly, "Old woman, have you ever dealt with that profiteer? I mean, have you ever done business with him?" Long Shirua was going to argue with Su Zijuan, but hearing this, she frowned. Why do you ask this? Su Zijuan glanced at Long Shiro and said coldly, that profiteer said that he could open Penglai if he had the ability. Long Shiro denied it, but she was more surprised. Penglai is just a legend. Su Zijuan said indifferently, legend has it that the first Shinryu was born in Penglai. Legend has it that Jiuzhou Xianyuan also came from Penglai. Legend has it that the immortals are in Penglai. It's a legend after all. Long Shiro finally started to repair the seal again, but she said, for countless years for this legend, countless people have died. Why do you have to spend so much effort for such an illusory thing? Instead of spending those meaningless efforts, you might as well care about the little guy below. What did you do to her? Nothing. Su Zijuan said indifferently, I'll fatten her up, can't I? Long Shiro didn't say anything. She knew Su Zijuan's bad character better than anyone, so she shook her head and said, try not to provoke that place. I feel that place is far more complicated than you, and I think, I know what to do. Su Zijuan replied indifferently, then looked at the corner of the cave and frowned. What's that? Long Shiro didn't look at it, but said casually, the thing that attacked me last time. I was busy repairing the seal, so I didn't care about it. I'll get rid of it later. It was a huge pile of rotten meat. Su Zijuan remembered that scene. After the huge meat ball attacked Long Shiro, it was killed by the old woman, and almost half of its body was cut off. After that, the river poured in. There should be another one, right? Su Zijuan came forward and looked at it, but this pile of rotten meat was too ugly, so Su Zijuan quickly avoided it with a disgusted look. I don't know, it should have been washed away by the river. Long Shiro said indifferently, I guess it's dead, I don't feel its breath. Su Zijuan suddenly sniffed. There's no smell of this thing nearby, but this was made by Xianglu. I'll go and ask him. This time he found a helper, so I have to ask him clearly. The land of Kelowna is not a place that can be coveted by others. When did you become so proactive? Long Shiro looked at Su Zijuan surprisingly. Su Zijuan said indifferently, although Xianglu was executed, his helper once attacked me. I haven't settled the score yet. Okay, go ahead. Long Shiro also knew Su Zijuan's vengeful character, so he shook his head. I'll go back to the hospital after I fix this place. Before Su Zijuan left, she glanced at the pile of rotten meat. She had noticed the existence of this pile of rotten meat when she came in. As for the reason of postponing the topic, Su Zijuan wanted to go to the depth of the ley line to see Xianglu with a reason that could deal with Long Shiro. She was not only fierce, but also a scheming girl. It was the sound of TV. Showing off magic. Goddess Duomi. Transform. Bayu Bayu. Xiaoji, lower the volume. Got it, Mom. Xiaoji held the remote with both hands and pressed the button to lower the volume. She stared at the TV and asked at the same time, Mom, what's for dinner? It's still early. After I finish grinding these soybeans, you can watch TV for a while. Sen Air stopped and wiped her sweat. The tofu shop in this small town was not big. The front was the place for business, while the back was the living area. Give me 3 yuan of tofu. Suddenly, there was a shout in front of the shop. Sen Air turned around with a smile. 3 yuan, right? Okay, but the smiling Sen Air soon turned into a non-smiling Sen Air. She just lowered her head and quickly cut 3 yuan worth of tofu. She put it in a banana leaf, tied a knot with a straw rope, and put it on the table. 3 yuan. The person who shouted to buy tofu was a man in his 30s. He was about 1.75 meters tall and was a little strong. The man didn't say anything. He took out his wallet and took out the money. He also stretched out his hand. Sen Air reached out to take it, but found that the man held the money tightly and didn't want to let it go. Not only did he not want to let it go, but he also reached out and directly grabbed Sen Air's hand. Gee, the back of your hand is so smooth. It's like tofu. But your hand is full of calluses, isn't it? You let go. You, what are you doing? Sen Air pulled back her hand and stared at the man fiercely. He was a famous rogue in this town. Little San Air, didn't anyone tell you that you look good when you stare at people? You put the money here. I'm going to close the shop. San Air didn't want to say more. She quickly began to clean up the shop. She went to pull the shutter here. But when the shutter was pulled halfway, the man reached out and stopped her. Don't rush. Let's talk again. The sun hasn't set yet, right? I have nothing to talk to you. San Air pulled the shutter hard and found that she didn't have the ability to pull it. Then do something else. Don't talk. The man squinted and smiled. When the sun goes down, there are still many things to do. Jean Cohen, are you leaving? If you don't leave, I will call the police. San Air hid far away. Are you calling me brother-in-law? Jean Cohen smiled and said, No, we just finished drinking at noon. With that said, Jean Cohen walked directly into the tofu shop and smiled evilly. San Air, you really don't want to think about it? You are a little woman with a child of a few years old. Your life must be hard, right? Why don't you follow me? Jean Cohen, you go. Please go. San Air's face looked anxious. I'm going to call someone. Call what? Jean Cohen sneered. Say that you, a widow, have started to hook up with men again? I think it must be. You haven't had a man for 2 or 3 years. You definitely can't stand it. You are slandering me. Mom. At this time, Xiaoji came out. The little girl heard the sound and walked out naturally. But when she saw Jean Cohen in front of her, she shrank her body in fear. Aya, Xiaoji. Jean Cohen suddenly smiled and picked up Xiaoji directly. Uncle, look. I haven't seen you for a few days. Have you become more beautiful? Jean Cohen, put her down. Put her down. I'm just looking at her. Why are you in a hurry? I don't eat people. Jean Cohen said, Xiaoji, Uncle will take you to eat delicious food, okay? Seeing that San Air was about to rush up to take back her daughter, it seemed that Jean Cohen also wanted San Air to do so. But at this moment, the table in front of the tofu shop suddenly made a few sounds. Someone knocked here a few times and said, Do you still sell things here? Chapter 445. A foreigner? Jean Cohen subconsciously put down Xiaoji. Because it was not a key tourist attraction, there were very few foreigners who would come to this town. But there were still some. At least Jean Cohen had seen them 10 or 20 times over the years. Foreigners were very troublesome in the local area. Jean Cohen's brother-in-law was from the police station, but he was not a leader. Scoundrels also had their own way of dealing with people. He knew clearly who he shouldn't mess with, who he shouldn't mess with, and who he shouldn't mess with. If he had a conflict with the foreigner in order to consolidate his territory like a lion, he would be accused of damaging international friendship. It was not something that his brother-in-law could bear. Moreover, his brother-in-law had always pretended to be deaf and mute when it came to him. But if he had really stirred up trouble, he naturally wouldn't put righteousness before righteousness just because of this little bit of friendship. San Air, greet the guest. Jean Cohen reached out and picked up the wrapped tofu, smiling and saying, I will come back tomorrow to buy tofu. As he said, he took out 2 coins from his trouser pocket, 2 1-yuan coins, and gently patted on the table. He looked like a whoremonger returning victoriously. No hurry. No need to cause trouble for a foreigner. Anyway, the future was long. The foreigner would leave, but the tofu shop couldn't. San Air naturally couldn't leave. Seeing that Jean Cohen had walked away, San Air hurriedly hugged Xiaoji and comforted her softly, and then came forward. She recognized that the man was picked up by her from the river. She didn't expect to see him again, so she didn't know what to say, but she had to say something. Thank you, thank you. The man shook his head, reaching out to take a coin from the table, pinching it with 2 fingers, and then suddenly waving his hand, throwing the coin out. San Air didn't know what the foreign man was going to do, but she immediately heard a sound. She subconsciously poked her head out, only to see Jean Cohen lying on the ground not far away, cursing loudly. He seemed to have suddenly fallen, and then his face was stuck on the dog poop on the road. Many locals who ran businesses on the street didn't dare to laugh. Sen also subconsciously covered her mouth and laughed. But she realized that this was probably caused by this foreign man, so she immediately retracted her head. Zhang Kuan, whose face was covered in dog poop, naturally did not have the face to continue to stay on the street. He lowered his head and hid in an alley with an unlucky expression. He was probably going to curse the heavens, curse the earth, and curse his mother. You went to the police station. Sen felt that it was better for her to say something first. I have. The foreign man said indifferently, but they can't help me. How could this be? Sen said incredulously. In her opinion, if the police couldn't solve the problem, it was really a tricky problem. The man suddenly said, but it doesn't matter. I've already remembered who I am. It's just that some of my memories are still very vague. I might be able to remember after some time. As he spoke, the man reached into his casual suit and pulled out a wallet. He opened his wallet in front of Sen. This is my ID card. Here's some money. Take it as rent. I'll stay here for a while and wait for my memory to return. Sen gave a start. She heard that foreigners were more straightforward, but it was not so straightforward. She subconsciously looked at the ID card on the wallet and silently read the foreign man's name. Mark. Sorry to disturb you. But before Sen reacted, this foreign friend, Mark had already walked in and began to look at everything here. Oh, wait, I haven't answered. The daughter Xiaoji suddenly pulled her mother's clothes and looked up. Mom, will this uncle protect us? I don't know. Sen shook her head. She always felt that her life seemed to have some strange changes. She had thought of refusing this Mark's request. She had thought about it. Deep underground, the aura in the ley line was abundant. Su Zijuan, who was bathing here, only felt comfortable all over. But she had experienced this kind of aura at her level. Even if she stayed in the ley line for 100 years, the effect was minimal. She had more important things to do. She came in front of Xiang Lu, who was imprisoned. The chains seemed to be alive, coming from all directions and entangling Xiang Lu's limbs and body. This scene was quite familiar to Su Zijuan. She had been treated like that when she first set foot in that strange shop. Xiang Lu, raise your head. Su Zijuan came in front of Xiang Lu and ordered indifferently. Xiang Lu raised his head with a pale face, like a patient who couldn't sleep and suffered mental torture all day long. But when he saw Su Zijuan, he sneered and said, I see who this is. Isn't this the princess? Why, come to see my poor appearance. But I like this place very much. Xiang Lu shook those chains. These things are noisy. Oh, I can't sleep. Let me ask you a few questions. If you can satisfy me, I may make you feel better. Su Zijuan said indifferently. Xiang Lu narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, Princess, do you have to beg me? Su Zijuan sneered. Her fingertips suddenly became sharp, gently touching Xiang Lu's throat. I can make you feel better, and I can also make you feel worse. Do you believe it? Tell me. Xiang Lu chuckled. Dark clouds cover the sky and the earth. Golden armor flying dragon. February 2nd. The dragon raises its head. Su Zijuan asked in a low voice, Where did you hear this sentence? Of course, I read it on a tablet. Xiang Lu's purple eyebrows suddenly became smoother. His eyes were as cunning as his heart. And not only this sentence, I know more. Where is the inscription on the steel? Princess, if you can set me free, I swear I will give you the tablet with both hands. How about that? I told you I'm not Long Shirwa. Su Zijuan's eyes were cold. Since you want to die, I'll help you. She suddenly opened her 5 fingers and stabbed into Xiang Lu's body with her sharp nails. I will drain your blood and let you die little by little. Anyway, you're now living a life worse than death, and you want to die wholeheartedly. Xiang Lu suddenly screamed. His blood flowed out crazily through the wound and then flowed. In front of him, it gathered into a blood ball and gradually became bigger. Xiang Lu, who had always been cunning and even vicious, was dumbfounded at once. Only then did he realize that the Shenyuan royal family was no longer the former princess who could be as vicious as she wanted to be. "Princess, if you kill me, you may never know where the tablet is," Su Zijuan snorted coldly. "At most, I'll just go and kill a few thousand wandering ghosts. Even if you don't tell me, I'll know it in my own way." Xiang Lu didn't know what killing thousands of ghosts had to do with the tablet, but it was a fact that Su Zijuan wanted to kill him. Xiang Lu looked at the blood ball that was growing bigger and bigger, calculating how much blood he could bleed and how much Su Zijuan could do and how long he could suppress his fear. Time flew by like this. Xiang Lu seemed to have reached his limit. He weakly moved his lips, but at this moment those chains wrapped around him suddenly turned and whipped toward Su Zijuan. Su Zijuan clapped her hands, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. At the same time, she was forced back by the attacks of the chains. The blood that was drawn out flowed back into Xiang Lu's body. After forcing Su Zijuan to step back, the chains returned to their original shape. Su Zijuan was surprised, but Xiang Lu laughed. "Ha ha ha! Princess, it seems that it's not easy for you to kill me. It won't let me die. Ha 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 ha! Then you'll never see the sun again." Su Zijuan snorted and waved her hand. A bloodlight was shot from her finger into Xiang Lu's mouth. Looking at Xiang Lu's shocked face, Su Zijuan sneered. "It's not that I can't kill you, but I'm too lazy to do it. What you just swallowed was my bloodthirsty curse. 3 times a day, I'll burn your blood and let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. You can enjoy it." As if to verify Su Zijuan's words, a burning pain suddenly spread throughout his body, and he couldn't help but let out a painful howl. And Su Zijuan had left with indifference. Su Zijuan went back to the ground and looked at the sky. It was not dark yet. She felt that the day was really long, so sleepy. There was a knock on the door. This was the director's office of Feiyun Entertainment, and the one who came in was the director. Of course, it was the female secretary. "Manager Chung, Li Zifeng from the Supervision Department wants to see you." Chun Yun frowned. Originally, he planned to hold a press conference 2 days ago to promote the new company, but he didn't expect to encounter such a strange thing as the sinkhole, so he had to cancel it temporarily. Although it was caused by external factors, his real boss, the second young master, was obviously upset these 2 days. As a golden henchman, he naturally felt sad these 2 days. "What's the matter?" "It seems that he wants to talk to you about some projects." "Let him in," Chun Yin said indifferently. Soon after, Li Zifeng came to Chun Yin. He was an old employee of Heaven's Shadow Entertainment. After Heaven's Shadow found a new owner and reorganized, most of the employees stayed. Of course, this was the second young master's idea. According to the second young master's idea, he must treat these old employees well. So Chun Yin put on a smile and said indifferently, "Li Zifeng, what's the matter?" Chapter 446. In the studio, Chun Yin and Li Zifeng, the tuner, and 2 employees of Feiyun Entertainment were also there through the glass, an experienced producer and an image consultant. They were commenting on Chang Yuran, who was in the recording room on the other side of the glass window. A coquettish man in his 30s who was dressed rather fashionably but somewhat effeminate tilted his head and said, "His appearance is just average. He's just a passerby." The tuner was playing a demo, which Li Zifeng asked Chang Yuran for. Another musician, who was one of the producers of Heaven's Shadow Entertainment, frowned. "His singing, it's not bad, but there's nothing special about it." "Li Zifeng, it's just at the level of an ordinary nightclub. Did you make a mistake this time?" Li Zifeng was embarrassed. He had just heard the demo, which was brought here together with Chang Yuran. "Let's listen to his live performance first," Li Zifeng said reluctantly. Although his voice was not full of confidence, Chang Yuran, who was sitting in the recording room with a guitar in his hand, looked quite confident. But just listening to this guy's demo, it was hard for Li Zifeng to recall the passion he felt at the nightclub that night. "Well, Since he's here, just let him sing a few lines. Chang Yin looked at his watch, making a decision. Second young master said, try to satisfy the requirements of these old employees, and don't discourage their enthusiasm. If not, he would rather see those young and beautiful girls come here to audition. Even if they couldn't sing, at least they had a good image. Wasn't there a post-production singer? Wasn't there a tuner? As long as the conditions were good enough and they were willing to spend money. Even if they were tone deaf, they could be promoted. Besides, Feiyun Entertainment didn't focus on singers. If they couldn't sing, they could shoot movies. They could become the agents behind the mysterious force. They would throw in 3D special effects as much as they could, and then use a Chinese foreign joint venture as a gimmick. Then, a group of foreigners would star in the movie, and then insert a female lead who could save the world. Then, they would add in some Chinese elements, such as the Great Wall of China and the Yellow River. They would not film the best, only the most expensive. So why not this kind of woman who was easy to promote, but a mediocre man who looked like a passerby in a bar? Chang Yin couldn't understand the thoughts of these musicians, but he was still able to sit in the middle among them. This was the power of capital. Mr. Ching, you can sing a part first. Li Zifeng turned on the microphone, saying to Cheng Yuran, when you're ready, make a gesture. We're all listening. Try to perform well. Don't hide. Cheng Yuran naturally didn't hear the voice until now. To be honest, it was the first time he came to this kind of recording room. Of course, it was expensive to build such a recording room. If it wasn't for this guitar, perhaps he wouldn't be able to come here except for his own expenses. Thinking of this, Cheng Yuran sighed softly. The demo Li Zifeng asked him to make was played by him with an ordinary guitar, and he himself had listened to it several times. As a matter of fact, it was indeed ordinary. Even if he tried his best to show off his singing skills, it was still ordinary in the end. But he still chose to send the demo here. He hoped that these people wouldn't have much expectation of him or directly despise him. You'll be surprised. Let my guitar conquer your ears. Cheng Yuran made an okay gesture, then closed his eyes and put his fingers on the guitar strings, but he didn't move or speak for a long time. Just when Cheng Yin on the other side was a little impatient, suddenly, Cheng Yuran's fingers quickly cut the strings. A few simple notes sounded at the same time, but at this time it was like a volcanic eruption with a great impact. The sound hit the eardrums of Cheng Yin and the others at the same time, attracting all their attention at once, as if it had magic power. The tuner even seemed to have forgotten about the mixing console in front of him. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his fingers couldn't help but start tapping naturally. He subconsciously said, "War, this is Black Panther's song." Finally, Cheng Yuran's mouth was close to the microphone, and he sang, "Love is love, that silent attitude. Swift and decisive, unrepentant when moved. There is a sea in my eyes, drowning anyone's arrogance. It's fast. Between heaven and earth, everything is straightforward. But there is someone who is shameless, competing with strength with a playful attitude. You don't like me, full of expectation. I'm talking to you, little darling, bring it on." Cheng Yuran's voice stopped. The guitar also stopped after the last solo, but the wildly beating heart didn't stop immediately. When Yun came back to his senses, he realized that he had already stood up at some point in time. Just now, he seemed to have followed the rhythm of the voice and kept shaking his arm. Amazing, amazing. This is King awesome. Cheng Yin wiped the sweat on his forehead, saying unbelievably, "I'm actually sweating all over." Manager Cheng, me too. Who? Li Zifeng also wiped his sweat, half out of excitement, the other half out of surprise. He was obviously afraid that Cheng Yuran couldn't meet his expectations, but now he was obviously relieved. "Let me tell you," the tuner now said seriously, "a guitar played the atmosphere of tens of thousands of people's concerts. I'm really convinced. Manager Cheng, with my more than 10 years of experience, he will definitely be popular. Popular. If not, I will quit the music industry." "How many times have you quit?" As the image director, this coquettish man rolled his eyes at the tuner, but he was fascinated by Chung Iran, clicking his tongue in wonder. Oh, it's not impossible to package. If the latent enthusiasm can be released, it can be very charming. So what? Chung Yun frowned while looking at these old employees who seemed to be enjoying themselves. In addition to Li Zifeng, another senior producer nodded and said, Manager Chung, I think this guy can do it. Oh, really? Chung Yun nodded, standing up and tidying up his clothes, nodding. Then let's do it. By the way, give me a copy of the recording later. I want to listen to it again. Walking out of the recording studio, Chung Yun stroked his chin, muttering to himself, This time did I pick up a treasure? Forget it, it's not a young model. Yeah. Chung Yun still couldn't resist the hot-blooded feeling of dancing. Walking back to his office in a flirtatious manner. Mr. Chung, that's great. You showed me what a real performance is. Li Zifeng opened the door, coming to Chung Iran. Palace level. It's definitely palace level. Thank you. Chung Iran nodded indifferently, but he was carefully tidying up his things. He really carefully tidied up his guitar. Our director is also very satisfied. Li Zifeng smiled and said, I think we can talk about your contract next. Chung Iran carried his guitar on his back, saying indifferently, Well, I'll think about it first. Let's see what you can offer. That's easy. Let's talk about it properly. Li Zifeng smiled. It wasn't that he had never seen such an arrogant musician, or rather, he had seen too many of them. But if there was a really capable musician who could make people crazy after listening to him, he would accept it no matter how arrogant he was. Let's keep in touch. Chung Iran nodded, leaving the studio and the building where Feiyun Entertainment Company was located. When he walked alone on the street, he looked at the city lights in front of him and suddenly took a deep breath. Although it was said that facing the people of such a big company like this was something that he never dared to think about before. But it's not bad. Chapter 447. The residents here had always called this place a paradise because it was an ideal country. On the other side of the mountain was the place where the believers of the Lord, who were favored by the Lord, could live. They hoped that they would be one of those favored by the Lord in the future. At the same time, because only the chosen ones could live here, they didn't know that there were many huge buildings on the other side of the mountain that they had never seen before, hidden underground. Here, there were also people who were called the leaders, who jointly managed this paradise. Starting from the hanged man, then the priestess, tower, temperance, pope, wheel of fortune, and so on, people who were named after tarot cards gathered again. This was the gathering after the order to hide the whole group. So many people with the name of tarot gathered here. Everyone, we lost contact with Cuck. The fool said slowly. On the screen belonging to the fool, there was only a simple pattern of a man wearing funny clothes and holding a white rose. Cuck, shouldn't he be on standby? What about Xiang Lu? We can't contact him either. The fool said indifferently, but considering that Cuck is missing, we can assume that Xiang Lu betrayed the contract. Cuck is very careful, and we also secretly issued an order to monitor Xiang Lu, the fool suddenly said. Do you remember that a few months ago we lost that batch of goods and then Scorpio was visited? This place suddenly became silent. The fool said, coincidentally, Cuck and Xiang Lu were also in that city. What do you think? At this time, a voice slowly said, First of all, we have to figure out whether Cuck is alive or dead. Before that, we maintain the original decision and suspend the activities around the world. Besides, many peripheral organizations of our club have been destroyed. Obviously, someone wants to deal with us. Is it the guy with the code name Avenger? Another voice came from the one called Pope. I know this. Priestess, you are in charge of intelligence. Haven't you figured out the origin of this Avenger? The priestess said, The Avenger is mainly active in the Middle East. According to the description of the Avenger in the report, I speculate that the Avenger is likely to be Jessica, who has been missing for some time. It's her? It's her. How could Jessica destroy our peripheral organization by herself? Or had she really sided with the Interpol? Ever since her betrayal, many of our spies have been secretly dealt with. The priestess faced the crowd and said indifferently, no, she should be alone. According to the survivors, I'm afraid that the Avengers have also mastered the method of using electricity. This is the only photo we have. A blurry image appeared on the priestess's screen. In this scene, a woman wearing a tight black leather jacket opened her arms, and some bluish-purple lightning arcs twined around her arms, and on the ground. Many people had collapsed. Did Jessica join the new Human Development Program before? Another voice was heard. The fool said she's not in the plan. According to the information, she should be a person with no potential. Well, there's one more thing. The call that Scorpio received was from Jessica's mobile phone. She bought the ability. That's the only possibility. The club. But we don't know if this ability will grow or how strong it will be. We can't let the Avengers continue to mess with our peripheral organizations. I suggest we use the power of the referees to eliminate the unstable factors. Seconded. In addition, we need to send someone to that city to investigate the whereabouts of Kuk and Xianglu. According to the news report, a sinkhole appeared there overnight, and a vision of flowers blooming. This shouldn't be a natural anomaly. Who will go there? Let the one who inherited the name of Nero go there. Seconded. It was quiet here again. It wasn't evening yet, so the nightclub with a luxurious door hadn't officially opened. But there were already staff inside, preparing for the evening business. For example, the manager of the nightclub, Manager Dai. At this moment, Manager Dai was counting the money, one by one, very carefully. Finally, Manager Dai knocked a stack of 3,000 yuan on the table and pushed it out. Come on, 5,000 yuan. Count it. No need, I trust you. Hongguan took the 5,000 yuan and smiled with a little gratitude. It was common for singers like him, who worked in the nightclub, not to receive any payment. Some bosses of nightclubs would even lower the price at the end and calculate all kinds of fees. There were even some who refused to pay. You said it yourself. Manager Dai said indifferently, if you don't count it, I won't take responsibility if you lose a member. Okay, no problem. Hongguan nodded. Then I will count it. Hongguan counted the money and suddenly asked, by the way, Manager Dai, have you seen Cheng Iran in the past 2 days? That guy. Manager Dai shook his head and sighed. I want to find him, but I haven't found him. He didn't answer the phone. What a jerk. Manager Dai. Why are you looking for him? Hongguan was slightly worried. Did he make any trouble again? After that night, the two of them were in a state of falling out. Hongguan tried to contact Cheng Yiran, but he didn't find him. He also thought that he should borrow Cheng Yiran's home since he received the money today. Nothing. Manager Dai shook his head and said, but if you can find him, do me a favor and tell me. Well, you tell him that I still want to invite him to come back and perform. Perform? Hongguan was stunned. Didn't he almost ruin the stage last time? Don't you know? Manager Dai was stunned. That night, that guy came back and went on stage to play the guitar and sing. Oh my God! The place suddenly exploded like a bomb. My customers are so high that they are flipping the sky. There's such a thing? Hongguan was a little surprised. He was probably the one who knew Cheng Yiran the best. He knew everything about Cheng Yiran. He really couldn't believe that Cheng Yiran could sing and play the guitar and cause the audience to explode. Could it be that at that time, those who had drunk enough would get high from whatever they listened to? Why would I lie to you? Manager Dai shrugged and said, isn't he your brother? You should know better than me. By the way, it's best if you can find him. Don't worry, I won't shortchange you. Hongguan didn't say anything. He left the nightclub from the back door with doubts. Just as he was walking in the alley, he seemed to have stepped on something. He suddenly stopped and looked down. It was a tag that was put on a necklace. Hongguan picked it up and wiped it clean with his hand. This was the tag that Cheng Yiran was wearing. Hongguan did not make a mistake. because he also had a piece of it on him. Hong Guan took out his tag from his collar, one in each hand, and became silent. This was something that each of them had when they first formed the band. They had agreed that these signboards were their symbols. He ran, but he found that he didn't seem to be in a position. After all, he was the one who took the initiative to leave. Hong Guan shook his head and sighed. Today, I'm not in the mood to go to Chung Iran's house. I'd better go to the hospital to see my wife. His wife was called Jean Xiao. He met her when he was singing in a nightclub. She was just a college student, but she fell in love with a poor guy like him. Then they fell in love and got married. They didn't even have a wedding banquet. They lived in a rented house for several years after marriage. She wasn't beautiful, but Hong Guan was willing to give up his illusory dream and return to reality for her, and honestly find a job to support the family. Then he opened the door of the hospital ward. Of course, it was a public ward with several people living together. Hong Guan carefully came to his wife's bed for fear of waking up other pregnant women. His wife was knitting something like a sweater. Didn't I tell you not to do these troublesome things? Hong Guan just sat down, frowning, and said with a displeased face, Anyway, I'm free. His wife Jean Xiaoyao also smiled. Have you received your salary today? Hong Guan nodded and said, Well, it went well this time. Now, let's wait for the baby to be born peacefully. With that, he touched his wife Jean Xiaoyao's round belly with a silly smile. Unexpectedly, Jean Xiao suddenly said, Hong Guan, is there something you're hiding from me that you didn't tell me? No. Hong Guan was stunned and said, What else can I hide from your golden eyes? I can't hide it for the rest of my life. You only know how to talk nonsense. Jean Xiaoyao rolled her eyes coquettishly and then took out a book from the drawer of the bedside table. It should be a magazine. She opened it in front of Hong Guan and said with a smile, If you didn't hide it from me, then what is this? Hong Guan was stunned and looked at it subconsciously. It was published in the entertainment magazine, the news of a new star's debut. And Hong Guan saw a familiar face among these newcomers. Chung Yuan, a new star's debut. Your brother finally debuted. Such a happy thing, but you didn't inform me in the first place. If you didn't hide it from me, what else could it be? Hong Guan paused. I was afraid that you would be too excited and affect the baby. Is there such a saying? Jean Xiao rolled her eyes again. But your brother really didn't have it easy. He finally made it. By the way, how did he become the star? Did he participate in some talent show? Well, did you secretly participate in it behind my back and then failed, so you didn't dare to tell me? Am I right? Hong Guan's mood was a bit complicated, but he didn't say anything. He just said subconsciously, what if I did? He was selected, but I wasn't. Do you think I'm useless as a husband? Jean Xiao looked at Hong Guan for a long time, and then suddenly asked, Am I hungry? I don't think so. I don't even have a bed for the baby. Yes, I won't let you have no bed, even if I have to sell my blood. Will you let me be wronged? I won't. Then who said you're useless? Jean Xiao gently hugged Hong Guan and said, I know that there will be a day when you shine brightly. Me, as long as you don't starve me, and the baby, I will wait quietly. Hong Guan's nose turned sour. Chapter 448. But Hong Guan decided to go to Chung Iran's house to see what happened. To be honest, if this guy really had such an opportunity, he felt that it was something to be happy about. But he didn't expect that when he came to Chung Iran's place, the landlord told him that Chung Iran had moved out. Not only did he move out, but he also paid off the rent. TSK, he was so arrogant when he left. Wasn't he afraid of falling down? Just like in all TV series, some scenes had to be played at a fast-forward speed. Chung Iran had a feeling that he was experiencing this kind of mode. Feiyun Entertainment's image consultant caught him for an entire day. From his hairstyle to his clothes, he even did a full set of spa treatments. He was so stunned that he couldn't recognize himself in front of the mirror. Sure enough, Slanted bangs can save the world. But looking at his new self, Chung Iran didn't say no. He didn't even feel annoyed about the etiquette class and the conversation class that followed. The only thing he hated was the image consultant's hand, which always liked to touch his chest. And now he was taking another class, singing skills. Chung Iran's singing was unorthodox. He figured it out by himself. Naturally, he couldn't compare with those who were specially trained, let alone those who were academically trained. Resonance, you must find the resonance between the eyebrows. Your voice has always been unstable, which means your breath is unstable. You need to practice more. Pop songs are not difficult, but it's not easy either. You need to put in effort. Since the singing teacher was paid by Feiyun Entertainment, he knew that this newcomer was the focus of training. Naturally, he wouldn't be careless. Chung Iran was currently enjoying one-on-one teaching. The others who were in the same batch were all under the guidance of the same teacher and used another room to practice. Singing was the most important sign to measure a singer. Chung Iran naturally didn't dare to be careless in this part, although he knew that as long as he could hold the guitar, he had the capital to shock everyone. But who wouldn't want to become more powerful? Outside the practice room, Li Zifeng and the image consultant were quietly watching her. Li Zifeng was the one who found her, so of course he had to be very careful. If Chung Iran could become famous in the future, he wouldn't let go of the position of manager. Well, Lucy, you're really something. After you taught him a few lessons, he's completely different. There was nothing wrong with a man with a female English name. So Lucy smiled proudly and said, as long as it's not like Seven Tails Gold, I can save anyone. Then is there really no way to save someone like Qi Liangjin? Li Zifeng asked curiously. Of course. Lucy shrugged and said, go to Korea. Don't mention 7 tails of gold. You can even save your face if you're disfigured. Li Zifeng's phone suddenly rang. Who is it? It's like this. Producer Li, there's someone here looking for Mr. Chung. The receptionist on the other end of the phone said politely. Oh, who is it? Li Zifeng asked curiously. If it wasn't an important person, he didn't want to let anyone disturb Chung Iran's practice. After all, the company wanted to promote Chung Iran as soon as possible, and they had already started to plan the date of his debut show. Oh, this gentleman's surname is Hong. He said he's Mr. Cheng's friend. They formed a band together and are good friends. Li Zifeng was stunned. He did remember that night at the nightclub. Chung Iran didn't come out alone at the beginning. He didn't really care about the other person's appearance. Anyway, the focus of that night was at the end. Oh, I see. Li Zifeng thought for a moment. How about this? You arrange for him to come to the reception room. I'll meet him first. Li Zifeng hung up the phone, and Lucy asked curiously, what's the matter? Li Zifeng thought about something and said casually, well, I'll go there. I'll see if I didn't pick up a fish that escaped the net. What's the matter? Let's talk about it later. Li Zifeng walked quickly. Hong Guan sat cautiously. In Li Zifeng's opinion, he was similar to Chung Iran in terms of appearance. Mr. Hong, right? Hello. I'm the producer of Feiyun Entertainment. My surname is Li. Li Zifeng sat down opposite to Hong Guan. Mr. Li, nice to meet you. Mr. Hong, I heard that you're looking for Iran, right? Li Zifeng asked directly. Well, yes, that's right. Hong Guan nodded. He hasn't shown up recently, so I'm a little worried about him. Oh, yes, I saw his news in a magazine, so I came here. Li Zifeng smiled and said, Iran has been busy with training during this period of time, so he has been closed off. We want him to focus on training, so we made some rigid requirements. Please don't mind. Hong Guan was enlightened. Well, that's right, that's right. Big companies are all like this. So is Iran here today? Oh, he's here. Li Zifeng nodded. He's learning singing from the teacher. And the class hasn't finished yet. Mr. Hong, if you have anything to say, you can tell me. I can help you to pass on the message, so as not to waste your time. Well, it's nothing. Hong Guan shook his head and said, Just tell him that I've looked for him. Tell him to look for me when he has time, or call me." With that, Hong Guan quickly stood up. "Well, Mr. Li, I won't bother you if there's nothing else." Li Zifeng suddenly said, "Mr. Hong, I heard that you formed a band with Iran before, right?" Hong Guan smiled embarrassedly. "In fact, we just got together to play. Don't take it seriously." Li Zifeng suddenly smiled and said, "Mr. Hong, do you mind singing something for me?" "What?" Hong Guan gave a start. Apparently he didn't expect Li Zifeng to make such a request. Li Zifeng smiled. "Just a few lines. It won't take too much of your time. I think, Mr. Hong, you won't refuse me, right?" "Well," Hong Guan showed a hesitant look. Should he give it a try or not? Hong Guan had never used such an advanced recording studio. Even if he broke any of the equipment here, it would take him a long time to pay for it. As for Li Zifeng, who was standing in front of the glass, and the tuner sitting there, they gave him a lot of pressure. But he finally agreed, even if he made the decision to give up his music dream. Hong Guan still couldn't resist his impulse when such an opportunity came. Speaking of which, if there was such an opportunity, he would be a fool if he didn't give it a try. But what made Hong Guan dumbfounded was he just gave away his best to a street vendor selling fish balls a few days ago. Fate really likes to play tricks on people. Hong Guan took a deep breath. In the former band, he was the main best player, but he still had the basic skills of guitar. Hong Guan took another deep breath, putting his hands on the strings. "I'm going to start." Li Zifeng nodded, and Hong Guan began to gather his emotions. He slowly opened his mouth to sing one of the songs that he had sung most often and was most familiar with when he was a resident singer. He didn't know how Li Zifeng and the tuner felt. Anyway, as he sang, he got into the mood. He didn't care so much. "It's different, completely different." The tuner was playing with the tools on the mixing console. "His singing is just SOSO, right? He's better than an ordinary person." "Li Zifeng, the one you found this time, is not good? You said he and Chung Yiran are in the same band? Why do I feel like one is heaven and one is earth?" Li Zifeng was a little disappointed, but not too disappointed. "I'm just taking a look. Maybe I can find a good seedling. But it doesn't matter if I can't find one. If I can find one with Chung Yiran, it will be much better than I expected." "Well," the tuner shrugged, "then should I stop?" Li Zifeng shook his head. "Let him finish. It's already started. We have nothing to do. Let's not be so ugly." "Hypocrite! Damn you! If there is any news, we will inform you as soon as possible, Mr. Hong. By the way, we will also tell Iran about your visit. Don't worry. It was probably this kind of polite way of saying things." Hong Guan didn't see Chung Yiran in the end, and then left Feiyun Entertainment with embarrassment. Walking on the street, everything was so strange. He and Chung Yiran seemed to have become strangers. But he suddenly took a deep breath, patted his face hard, and was ready to go to work because he found a stable job. The most important thing was that his boss was kind and helped him to buy medical insurance. His wife gave birth to a child, and with the reimbursement, the burden was naturally much lighter. Hong Guan smiled and suddenly reached out to the sky, putting his middle finger and thumb together. The rock and roll dream of his life was over. Chapter 449. There was not only a special practice room, but also a separate lounge. Chung Yiran was just a newcomer who hadn't officially debuted, but he enjoyed the treatment of a real star, not just an ordinary one. It was said that the director of Feiyun Entertainment made the decision, saying that Chung Yin was very optimistic about Chung Yiran. In the lounge, Chung Yiran had just finished the singing training, sat on the sofa, feeling that his throat was about to split. This place was called the lounge of the company, but it was not a problem to live here. Everything was available. Li Zifeng suddenly knocked on the door and came in with a black box in his hand. Chung Yiran was very familiar with this kind of bag. It was used to store guitars. Putting down the things, Li Zifeng also sat down and smiled. "How are you feeling these days?" "Not bad, just a little tired." Chung Yiran rubbed his eyebrows. "Well, you'll be busier when the time of your debut is fixed. Li Zifeng opened the bag at the same time. Here, I'll give you something good. Try it. Cheng Yuran was stunned, but still reached out and took the guitar from Li Zifeng. As a rock star, he had a feeling of fondness when he held the guitar in his hand. Cheng Yuran was surprised. This is Zemaitis, the discontinued version? Yes. Li Zifeng smiled. Don't worry, and it's definitely not a replica. It's just a second-hand good, but it's also genuine. I accidentally got it when I was on a business trip in Europe 2 years ago. Take it, your previous one is too old, although the sound is very good. But with your ability, of course, you should use the best instrument. Cheng Yuran suddenly shook his head and returned the Zemaitis to Li Zifeng. This is too expensive, and it's a collection. I can't take it. Why are you so polite to me? Li Zifeng said enthusiastically. It looks good in my hands, but sooner or later it will mold. But it's different in your hands. Only in your hands can it display its greatest value. Besides, you're going to be on the big stage sooner or later. If you use an ordinary instrument, you'll be laughed at. People will say that our Feiyun Entertainment can't even afford a good instrument. Mine is enough. Cheng Yuran shook her head. If it were me, I wouldn't be used to it. Li Zifeng was taken aback, but he didn't force him too much. He even smiled and said, Well, looking at you, you're not the kind of person who is devoted to love, right? But it doesn't matter, you can take it first. Besides, which rock artist doesn't have a few guitars on him? You can keep it for later use. Then, all right. Cheng Yuran could only nod. He really liked this Zemaitis product. By the way, a man named Hong Guan came to see you today, Li Zifeng suddenly said. Hong Guan. Cheng Yuran was stunned. After a moment of silence, she said, Why are you only telling me now? Li Zifeng said, I'm afraid to distract you. Besides, forget it, it's nothing. You have time to rest, so you can talk to him. Just say what you want to say. Cheng Yuran frowned. She felt that Li Zifeng's tone seemed to be hiding something. It's really nothing. Don't think too much. Li Zifeng shook his head, but Cheng Yuran was a little impatient. Her eyes narrowed and stared at Li Zifeng as if she was interrogating. You better tell me clearly. Okay. Li Zifeng sighed and said, Just now Mr. Hong came to see me. He said that he formed a band with you and is a good brother. And then Cheng Yuran frowned. Li Zifeng sighed again. Anyway, we just talked for a while and finally, I agreed to let him sing a few words. But to be honest, Yuran, I can only say that this brother of yours is ordinary. But if he really wants to develop, I can consider it. I'll do it for your sake. But, to be honest, the company's resources won't be too much for him. He can be a simple artist. Did he really ask you to give him a chance? Cheng Yuran frowned. He's not that kind of person. I don't know. Li Zifeng shrugged. But according to the situation, he should have some financial difficulties, right? It seems that he is very tired. Hongguan, his wife, is about to give birth. Cheng Yuran shook her head. We didn't have much money before, it's true. No wonder. Li Zifeng nodded and suddenly realized, seeing that you have a chance, it's normal for him to ask you for help. And his wife is about to give birth. It's normal for him to need money. He's not that kind of person. Cheng Yuran suddenly said angrily. Don't be angry, I said something wrong. Li Zifeng hurriedly said in a good tone, but as the old saying goes, a man with a penny is not a hero, right? Besides, if he's really in trouble, won't he look for opportunities? You've been poor before, don't you know? People will always change. Just like you, who became famous overnight. Won't your brother have any ideas? Cheng Yuran suddenly became silent. He had to admit that what Li Zifeng said was true. For example, in order to get a job in the nightclub, he humbled himself and even made a fake gimmick. Let's do this. Seeing that Cheng Yuran didn't speak, Li Zifeng suggested, I have some acquaintances in the TV station, and I can arrange some for your brother. It's not a problem to do some impromptu performances. Maybe he can be a part of the staff in the future. But if you want him to debut as a newcomer, there's really no way. Even if you want to debut with him as a duo, there's no way, because the company won't do this. If Mr. Hong and you debut together, it will only lower your performance. The company won't allow it. What do you think? Let me think about it. Chung Hiran took a deep breath. I want to take a rest. Okay, no problem, you take a rest first. Li Zifeng nodded. I'll come to you in the evening. You have to have dinner with the director tonight. I heard that the big boss also wants to see you. Big boss? Chung Hiran gave a start. As far as he knew, Director Chung seemed to have a very high authority in Feiyun Entertainment, but he had never seen the real senior management. Li Zifeng laughed. Yes, I haven't had dinner with the big boss before, and this time it's all thanks to you. So, have a good rest and perform well in the evening to make the big boss happy. You can't forget it. He gently patted Chung Hiran's shoulder as if to encourage him, casually playing the Zemitis electric guitar sent by Li Zifeng. Chung Hiran kept silent. Suddenly, he picked up the phone, hesitated for a moment, and opened the first number in the phone book. Hong Guan. Hello, Hiran. Are you looking for me? It was a familiar voice. Chung Hiran didn't know why, but there was a strange invisible barrier in front of him. Compared with Hong Guan's enthusiasm, he seemed to be much colder. Well, I heard that you came to me. What's the matter? No. Hong Guan smiled. I haven't seen you for a while and couldn't get in touch with you. I was a bit worried about you, so I went to your house and the landlord said you moved away. I happened to see you on the magazine, so I knew about your situation. I was afraid that you would be cheated, so I wanted to see it clearly. Now it's all right. This is a big company, so there should be no problem. Done. You should seize the chance. But the voice on Hong Guan's side seemed to be a bit noisy, so Chung Hiran couldn't help frowning. Hong Guan, where are you? So noisy? Oh, the garage is a bit noisy. Wait for me. I'll go quickly and talk to you. After a while, Hong Guan continued. How is it? Is it okay? You. Why are you in the garage? Sigh. I just hired someone here and the treatment is okay. And before I joined you guys, I was originally learning how to repair cars. Anyway, I'll just stay here for now. Chung Hiran was silent for a while. I just heard that you sang a song here. Is that right? Oh, yes. Hong Guan said directly. How is it? Is there any news? I feel that I was really scared to death just now. I don't know if I performed well. I'm not afraid that you will laugh at me. I really didn't want to do it, but I didn't expect that the opportunity was right in front of me. So I braced myself and did it. But Chung Hiran didn't say anything. Hong Guan seemed to know what happened, so he smiled. But it's okay, I know my own situation. You don't have to say anything for me. That Mr. Li won't make things difficult for you, right? Nothing. By the way, Hong Guan, I have to go to class. Chung Hiran suddenly said, Let's talk later, okay? Okay, you are busy. Hong Guan quickly said, Congratulations, you finally have the chance to realize your dream, but the phone was cut off. Hong Guan shook his head, smiling with a complicated expression, and put the phone back. The mechanic in the garage called him. A penny stumped a hero. Chung Hiran thought of Li Zifeng's words. People will change. Can we only go through hardships together? Just because I made some achievements, he came to me to ask for a chance behind my back? Did he forget that it was he who took the initiative to disband a few days ago? Chung Hiran thought of a lot of things, but he also found that it seemed that during this period he didn't think about the existence of Hong Guan. He was always busy and excited. He still didn't believe that Hong Guan would have the idea of relying on him because of this, probably. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Li Zifeng looked at him and asked with concern. They were in the car, on the way to Director Cheng's dinner. Oh, it's nothing. Just a bit tired from the class. I'll be fine after a rest. Chung Hiran shook his head, then looked at Li Zifeng and suddenly said, By the way, you just said the TV station, that thing, is it really okay? Of course not. Li Zifeng patted his chest and said, I'm familiar with the people in the TV station, so it's not a problem. If I do well in the future, I can use my connections to get an official position. It's better than singing in the streets, right? I'll leave this matter to you. Cheng Yuan took a deep breath. Thank you. What are you talking about? Li Zifeng said angrily. Who are we? I personally found you. How can I not help you? As long as you are doing well, I will naturally do well too. I will try my best to satisfy you. You are now in a critical period, so I can't let you be distracted, right? I will take care of Hongguan's matter, so you can rest assured. During this time, you just need to shut yourself in and practice hard. You don't need to worry about anything else. I will serve you 24/7. Cheng Iran didn't say anything and just patted Li Zifeng's shoulder. Then she closed her eyes and rested. She felt that this Li Zifeng was like her benefactor. In the bustling streets of the city, the lights had just been turned on, and the big plazas and shopping malls in the city were particularly lively. This was the best time for the hawkers to do business. Some people were setting up a 20 yuan watch stall. Some are setting up toys for 10 yuan and 3 yuan. Some are carving words, some are putting on film masks, and some are singing. Just because I saw you in the crowd, I couldn't forget your face anymore. I dreamed that one day we could, gently strumming and singing, that was Hongguan. He simply plugged in a small sound system, but after he got off work, he didn't have time to eat and started singing his third song. In front of him was a small stall, selling some gadgets like mobile phone chargers. I would rather spend my life waiting for you to find out there would be some scattered rewards. Occasionally, 1 or 2 cheap chargers would be sold. But anyway, there would be more than a dozen, and the accumulation would be quite a lot. Because he could buy some nutrition for his wife, he would make a profit. Although he gave up that dream, it wasn't easy to make a living. His wife was about to give birth, so he naturally wouldn't give up on making money. If there was a nightclub, he would go, but he wouldn't have that dream anymore. The love story of this life won't change. I'll always be by your side, never go far. Suddenly, someone clapped softly in front of Hongguan, then walked over and gently put a bill on top of his guitar case. 100 yuan. This was the only big bill in the case. The others were 1 yuan, 5 yuan, and so on. Thank you, thank you. Hongguan was not stingy with his gratitude. He felt that this young man was generous. You're welcome. The young man smiled and said, It's really nice. Hongguan was stunned, then smiled bitterly. You flatter me, I'm just a street singer. It's not the problem of singing. The young man smiled. It's something else. Will you still be here tomorrow? Ah. Hongguan was stunned again, but he didn't hide anything. See, I'll come back if I have time. The young man nodded and gradually disappeared in the crowd. Hongguan looked at the brand new bill and muttered, Strange guy. What's this song? Miss Maid, who was bringing tea, stopped and quietly listened to the song played by the master. It was a very ethereal female voice. Legend. A popular song a few years ago. Luochio whispered, Well, the taste is really different. Yu Yi, let's go shopping tomorrow at this time. Chapter 450. His surname was Zhong, but he didn't tell his full name. This 30-year-old young man was the big boss behind Feiyin Entertainment? Cheng Yuan looked at him with surprise. Naturally, he felt a sense of oppression from this young big boss. He thought to himself, this guy has a strong aura. After Cheng Yan's brief introduction, he sat down slowly. This wasn't a private room of a luxurious hotel, nor a small room of a famous restaurant, but a luxuriously decorated music club, KNC. Cheng Yuan had heard of KNC, which was a place where some rich kids liked to hang out. Of course, many people would try their best to show their faces here. This was because there were often many well-known musicians or people in the entertainment industry who would appear here. Relax, just like a normal chat. The big boss with the surname Zhong was naturally the second young master of the Zhong family, Zhong Luochen. Qing Yun praised him. Zhong Luochen naturally wanted to see what kind of person could make Qing Yun praise him. He was very clear that Cheng Yun had always been very careful. If he wasn't sure about something, he wouldn't dare to be so flamboyant and promise in front of him. Ah, ha, Mr. Zhong said to relax, so let's relax. Come on. Cheng Iran, what do you want to drink? Cheng Yun immediately began to adjust the atmosphere. Li Zifeng naturally didn't dare to say anything. He wouldn't say anything to stop Cheng Yiran before he figured out the character of this big boss behind the scene. I don't know much about wine. Cheng Yiran shook his head. Director Cheng, you can make the decision. Okay, I'll make the decision. Cheng Yun smiled. This was giving him face. He liked others giving him face. Of course, most of the brands could be found here. After all, most of the people here were drinking and chatting. Of course, playing music was also the main thing. As for food, there were only fruits and snacks. Then, Cheng Yiran found this Mr. Zhong rarely spoke. He was quiet without appearing to be superior, but at the same time, people didn't dare to act rashly. They were both young, but the gap between them was like heaven and earth to Cheng Yiran. At this time, Cheng Yun suddenly stopped talking and said, "Oh right, Cheng Yiran, since we are here, why don't you show us what you've got?" Sure enough, they had come. Cheng Yiran said in his heart. From the moment he walked into this KNC, his intuition told him that it wouldn't be so simple. It seemed that no matter what he said, it was not as good as seeing it for himself. This big boss wanted to test him, but he had enough confidence. No matter how much he said, it was not as convincing as the facts. Then let's do it. Cheng Yiran nodded in a natural and unrestrained manner and revealed a trace of a smile. He was prepared for this, or rather, he never left the guitar that he got from the mysterious merchant. Even when he entered KNC, he still brought it with him. You're quite confident. Seeing Cheng Yiran on the stage, Zhong Luoqin smiled faintly. In Li Zifeng's eyes, this smile was almost perfect, so perfect, like a dream. But he had a feeling that it wasn't from his heart, but a kind of like the best actor's smile. Was this big boss playing himself wholeheartedly? Such a thought flashed in Li Zifeng's mind, but he didn't care about it. Was it necessary to play himself? It could only be said that this man was too perfect. Cheng Yun smiled apologetically. Mr. Zhong, you should listen to his live performance. Zhong Luoqin didn't say anything, just waved his hand, and then slowly turned his head, waiting quietly. At this time, Cheng Yiran was negotiating with KNC. He didn't ask other temporary performers to perform. They weren't his partners, so he couldn't put them together. So after plugging in the audio cable and adjusting the volume, Cheng Yiran sat on the high stool on the small stage. He had the experience of performing on stage, so naturally he wouldn't have stage fright. The magical guitar in his hand gave him a strong confidence. Cheng Yiran held the microphone in front of him, smiling. The atmosphere here is so good, I'll sing something. Hotel California, I hope you like it. Different from the original singer's voice, Cheng Yiran's voice was obviously young and full of tension. After several days of singing lessons, Cheng Yiran corrected some small mistakes in the past, so the first line of the song was more natural and smooth than before. When the sound of the guitar rang out, it had already caught the attention of the guests in the KNC. In KNC, there were many people in the circle, and occasionally some big names in the circle would appear. The people here all had some professional knowledge. However, this knowledge was impacted by the sound of the guitar like never before. It was obviously a very simple start, and there wasn't much skill involved. But the first note was able to turn into quicksand, slowly dragging people into a soft and powerless whirlpool, and sinking deeper and deeper, as if they couldn't extricate themselves. Some female customers even began to show a fascinated look. KNC suddenly became quiet, as if it was late at night. People seemed to be brought to this foreign hotel in the middle of the night, looking at the dusk around it. Zhong Luoqin also listened to all the guests, but at the same time he could also carefully observe the reactions of the people around him. Their expressions, their movements, their gazes, none of them escaped the eyes of the second young master of the Zhong family. He was very clear that these people had been conquered by the young man playing the guitar on the stage, but he himself was not. He was not interested. Zhong Luoqin soon found his problem. He had lost his interest. Not only that, even love, the joy of happiness, and so on. Only the sense of achievement could make his mood rise. Obviously, listening to Qingyuan singing didn't bring him any sense of achievement. Perhaps after this young man got outstanding achievements in the music circle, as the behind-the-scenes driving force, he would feel the achievement spontaneously, and then he would be happy. Of course, no one could guess Zhong Luoqin's thoughts, and the surrounding guests had been immersed in Qingyuan's performance, so no one paid attention to him. Even Qingyan didn't pay attention to Zhong Luoqin at this moment. Zhong Luoqin frowned when he noticed this. He knew the thoughts of this follower, and also knew that he was flattering and temporarily showing his loyalty all the time. But now he seemed to have forgotten these. This was too abnormal. Zhong Luoqin then began to study the appearance of the guests, feeling more and more strange, as if they were possessed. Suddenly, Qingyuan knocked on the microphone, whispering, "Thank you for listening." It turned out that Qingyuan's song had been unknowingly finished, and the guests in KNC. At this time, all of a sudden there was applause. Naturally, it couldn't be compared with the applause of the audience in a concert, but all the guests present applauded. This was something that had never happened before in KNC's history. This young guitarist had already conquered the ears of everyone present. The guests were still unsatisfied, and a woman's voice sounded, asking Qingyuan to continue. Someone spoke, and endless requests began to appear. Qingyuan was at a loss as he looked at the table where Li Zifeng and the others were sitting. He found that Li Zifeng nodded to him, indicating that it was okay. "Then I'll sing another song." Qingyuan smiled slightly. This feeling of being sought after was like the datura flower, intoxicating. The guests once again fell into an uncontrollable intoxication. As for Zhong Luoqin, he once again fell into doubt. Because he could not be intoxicated, he felt like an outsider. So he gradually had some ideas or conjectures, previously unknown. In one night, Zhong Luoqin narrowed his eyes slightly, which reminded him of a certain place, a boss. He could find that place through the Zhang family. Why couldn't others? Everyone. Hello, I'm Li Zifeng. Maybe some of you here know me. And I also see a few acquaintances. Qingyuan sang a total of 4 songs in a row. Then he got off the stage. He felt that if he didn't take the initiative to get off the stage, the people here would continue to listen, and even sing until his throat became hoarse. But this was too abnormal. Or in other words, the power of this guitar was too strong. So Qingyuan couldn't help but worry about something. After he got off the stage, Li Zifeng immediately caught up with him. "Just now, this is Qingyuan. I hope you can all remember his name. Because next, Qingyuan will be the focus of our Feiyun entertainment to promote a newcomer. I hope you can pay more attention to him in the future." The guests chuckled. Of course, they remembered the name Qingyuan. This guy is good at advertising. Zhong Luoqin smiled faintly, looking at Qingyan and saying. Qingyan saw that Zhong Luoqin was satisfied with this effect. So he immediately said, "This Li Zifeng, after so long, he has some ability and means. Second young master, if you think he's good, why don't we put him in an important position?" Qingyan wouldn't insult someone in front of Zhong Luoqin because he knew this second young master didn't like people who gossiped. "Do as you deem fit." Zhong Luoqin suddenly stood up, twisting the buttons of his suit, saying indifferently, "I have something to do. So I'll go back first. You don't need to see me off. This Qingyan is good. Train him well. He's worth training." "Second young master, take care," Qingyan said respectfully. Now that Li Zifeng and Qingyan weren't here, he naturally could call him second young master. When Qingyan came back, Zhong Luoqin left at the same time. The two passed by each other. Qingyan met Zhong Luoqin's eyes, seeing a faint smile in his eyes, and subconsciously gave a start. The moment Zhong Luoqin walked past, he suddenly said softly, "You need to learn how to conceal yourself." What did he mean? Chapter 451. Eat slowly, don't choke. On one of the beds in the public ward, Jin Xiao gently woke Hong Guan up. This Hongguan ate too fast, as if he was swallowing it. It's okay. I have to eat faster. I have to go to work later. Hongguan drank a mouthful of water and said with a smile. Jin Xiao said with some heartache, You don't have to come here at noon. Look at you. You are tired. Hongguan said happily, The place where I work is full of men. How can they be better looking than you? Damn you. Jin Xiao rolled her eyes, but she obviously couldn't hide the joy in her heart. I will peel some grapefruit for you. You can eat it on the way. Hongguan suddenly received a phone call at this time. He was afraid to disturb the people next to him, so he walked out of the ward. Soon after, Hongguan returned to Jin Xiao's side. His face was somewhat strange. What's wrong? Jin Xiao asked curiously. Hongguan was taken aback as he patted his face. Then he looked at his wife and said, Someone came looking for me just now and asked if I wanted to work at the television station. He said that if I had time in the afternoon, I should go to the television station to meet him. Ah? Jin Xiao was obviously a little surprised by this news. Unlike the past when he drifted to Beijing, he could find a lot of opportunities. In some local TV stations, the entry threshold was relatively high. At least, Hongguan had never entered the TV station in this city. Of course, as one of the landmarks, Hongguan still knew where the TV station was. To Hongguan's surprise, it seemed that he was the only one who came here to participate in the so-called interview. The reason why he came here was, of course, to see what happened. Is this Mr. Hongguan? In a small office, Hongguan saw the person who called him Mr. E. Of course, in addition to Mr. E, Hongguan also saw Li Zifeng, whom he had met once before. For a moment, he seemed to understand why he received a call from the TV station. What happened next was very simple. Mr. E asked him if he was willing to take a job in the TV station. The contract he signed was a non-official contract. Naturally, he wouldn't have the same standard of treatment as an official, but it was much better than his job in the garage. Mr. Hongguan, is there any problem with this temporary contract? Hongguan knew that this was a good opportunity. Many people racked their brains and were willing to stay here even if the pay was lower, because if he stayed here, he would be able to open a door for his future, an opportunity. Can I think about it? Hongguan hesitated for a while before he said something that surprised Li Zifeng and Mr. E. Mr. E looked at Li Zifeng. Obviously, he wanted to see what Li Zifeng was going to say. Before this, he was just selling a favor to Li Zifeng. As for this Hongguan, it was not his business whether he accepted it or not. After all, he had already helped her. Whether she accepted it or not was her business. How about this? You two talk first? Mr. E smiled and said, I'll go to the bathroom first. Mr. E said and went out of the door very calmly, leaving Li Zifeng and Hongguan alone. Just when they were silent, Li Zifeng suddenly said with a smile, Mr. Hong, is it because it's too sudden that you can't react? No, actually, Hongguan said. I really can't react in time. Mr. Li, why are you helping me? To be honest, I'm also doing something for Iran. Li Zifeng smiled and said, You know, Iran, our company values him very much. Of course, we will try our best to satisfy his small request. Iran. Hongguan was stunned. You mean this is his idea? Li Zifeng suddenly said, You can take it as my suggestion. Okay. Mr. Hong, I heard from Iran that you have some financial difficulties. I think this job may be able to help you. Hongguan frowned. Why didn't he tell me in person? Mr. Hong, Iran is very busy now. Li Zifeng still smiled and said, In addition, if possible, I hope you will not take the initiative to find him in the future. After all, I don't want him to be distracted during this period. The beginning is very important for a newcomer. Those paparazzi especially like to dig up the newcomers, especially the negative things, which are the bones for paparazzi to fight for. I don't want Iran to be harassed at the beginning, and to have a quiet environment. What do you mean? Hong Guan's face darkened slightly. What negative things? Mr. Hong, don't get me wrong. Li Zifeng said seriously, this is our company's plan. We intend to package Iran as a person who has always been working hard for his dream and never gives up. Packaging a kind of self-improvement image. So, some things should not be known to others as much as possible. I don't understand what you are talking about. Hong Guan frowned. At this time, Li Zifeng suddenly moved his chair, facing Hong Guan, and whispered, Mr. Hong, I know you formed a band and drifted in Beijing for a period of time. After a pause, Li Zifeng rubbed his hands and said, young people are immature, so it's understandable for them to be impulsive. In fact, it's not a big deal. Don't beat around the bush. Just say it. Hong Guan said in a low voice. Li Zifeng sighed. Well, then I'll say it directly. Mr. Hong, I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I did check your background. Since they had investigated, they knew something. You, Iran, and another member of your band had committed a crime in the past and had a criminal record. And he had been in the detention center, right? Hong Guan's face suddenly darkened. This was something they didn't want to mention. Something they couldn't forget and let go of. Hong Guan hadn't spoken for a long time. And that he couldn't go to the toilet for such a long time. He probably just waited outside for the result. But on the other hand, didn't it also prove that Li Zifeng was very capable? Mr. Li. Hong Guan suddenly took a deep breath. Tell me honestly, is it your idea or Iran's? Li Zifeng said ambiguously, It's not important, Mr. Hong. The important thing is that we won't treat you badly. You see, this work is just the beginning, and you'll have a chance to be formally authorized in the future. By the way, at this time Li Zifeng took out a check from his suit and put it on the table, saying indifferently, Iran asked me to give this to you, saying that your wife is about to give birth and needs money. A check of 100,000 yuan. Why didn't he give it to me in person? Hong Guan didn't move, but looked straight at Li Zifeng, which was a bit scary. Didn't I tell you? Also, he's really busy now. His schedule for the day is packed, and he doesn't have enough time to rest. Hong Guan gritted his teeth. Okay, I know. 100,000 yuan? You really don't want it? Are you an idiot? What about the job in the TV station? Why don't you agree? In the garage, a man sat beside Hong Guan. Strictly speaking, he was the boss of the garage, Hong Zhongshuan. In fact, he was also Hong Guan's fellow countryman. Before Hong Guan drifted to the north, he had worked as a mechanic for Hong Zhongshuan, his fellow countryman. It could be said that this boss was one of his few friends who were closer to him than some of his relatives. Uncle, you helped me when I was in the most difficult time. Hong Guan shook his head and said, And it's almost the end of the year, and you are short of people. At this time, how can I leave now? Hong Zhongshuan shook his head and sighed. That's why I said you are stupid. I'm starting to understand why that so-called brother of yours was able to make his way up the ranks and make his debut. But you're still squatting here, because you don't do anything. Uncle. Hong Guan frowned. Hong Zhongshuan suddenly patted Hong Guan's shoulder and said, But it's good that you are not like your brother, turning hostile after becoming famous. Bah, who do you think you are? Can some things be settled with money? Uncle, don't say that. Hong Guan shook his head. Don't say that, I want to be alone. Hong Zhongshuan didn't say anything else, but patted Hong Guan's shoulder and said, Get off work early today, and go to the hospital early to accompany your wife. What are you still thinking about? In fact, it's not that we can't separate, but the most terrible thing is to drag on. Hong Guan's sight was unfocused, but his years of experience made him still able to sing and play even if he was distracted. But at the same time, he didn't pay attention to the people in front of his stall. But in the end, he saw a familiar person. During this period, Hong Guan found that whenever he sang here, there would be this young man. At first, he was alone. Then the next day, he found this young man came with a very beautiful girl. The young man and the girl were really a good match. This was Hong Guan's feeling. The two would always appear at some unknown time, quietly listening to him singing. Hong Guan felt that time seemed to stop because of the arrival of the young man and the girl. It was not his time that stopped, but their time stopped. Although it was a subtle feeling, to be honest, Hongguan was quite happy with the arrival of this young man, because he could get the young man's tips every day. Several times, Hongguan wanted to thank him properly, but he always inadvertently lost track of the young man and the girl. But today, Hongguan discovered that he didn't receive any reward, because this young man simply brought along his maid and disappeared from the square at some unknown time. It was as if they had never stayed there today, like other passers-by. Hongguan tidied up his stall with a complicated expression. Chapter 452. Jinggang Mountain Seeping. With the ability of a Black Soul envoy, it was not particularly difficult to go to a place. Even a newcomer like Tai Inzi knew how to pass through walls, not to mention a veteran like Number 9 who had been an envoy for many years. The boss ordered Black Soul, Number 9, to move forward without stopping. He entered the place marked on the map given by the boss early. But what puzzled Black Soul Number 9 was that he didn't get any further hints, even though he had already arrived at the place marked on the map. The red mark was still flashing on the map, but he didn't know what to do after arriving here. According to the boss, he needed Black Soul Number 9 to find something for him. Obviously, it was not easy to find, because according to Black Soul Number 9's words, it seemed that even the owner himself wasn't sure about what he was looking for. Was there something that the boss wasn't sure about? Black Soul Number 9 didn't believe in this situation, but Black Soul Number 9 had very good patience. Moreover, the new owner would not let the map give him such a hint for no reason. Perhaps he still needed to find some clues himself. So he came to Tsiping, but he didn't know why he chose to stay here and wait. It was only because when he stepped into the Jinggang Mountains, the two words Tsiping naturally appeared in his mind. Black Soul Number 9 thought that this was another hint from the new boss. But this place was full of historical aura everywhere. On the street with many museums and memorials, Black Soul Number 9 stood under an old tree, silently looking at an old house in the alley. Why did he look at it? He didn't know. Sen Er's life seemed to have changed a little, but it didn't seem to have changed anything. She still ran her tofu shop, took care of her daughter Xiaoji's daily life, and worked as usual. Sen Er felt that her life was actually like waiting for the cooked soy milk to cool down. The light, milky yellow color was very calm, and there was only a trace of rising water vapor. However, the surface of the soy milk would solidify very quickly. As long as a bamboo stick was used to pick it up, it would be easy to pick up another thing that was full of wrinkles. Tofu. Was Mark the tofu that she had congealed in her life? Put it here, okay? Sen Er, who was thinking about something in front of the millstone, suddenly heard Mark's voice from behind. She was almost shocked and quickly turned around. Mark was wearing an old shirt. It was originally a white shirt, but some parts of it had turned yellow. There were many molds next to Mark. These were the tools used to press the tofu into shape. The yellowing shirt, the rolled-up trousers, and the slightly cracked leather shoes. For a moment, Sen Er seemed to see a familiar figure that had long disappeared. Why did he have to wear these clothes? Oh, that's enough. Sen Er quickly nodded. Sorry to trouble you. You don't actually need to do all this. Mark said indifferently. It doesn't matter. I have nothing to do anyway. I'll put the things here. You can continue with your work. Mark didn't stay for too long. Sen Er found that Mark was a relatively silent person most of the time. He wouldn't communicate with her too much. Sometimes he might say a few words to Xiaoji, but that was only because he was annoyed by Xiaoji's pestering. Mark didn't say how long he would stay, and Sen Er didn't take the initiative to ask him how long he would stay. It seemed that this topic didn't exist, or everyone deliberately avoided this topic. Sen Er continued to work. That day, Zhang Kuan came and left after seeing Mark. The next day, he came again to make trouble. At that time, Mark didn't show up. He didn't even leave the small room where he lived. It was the neighbors who helped Sen Er. But that night, it was said that Zhang Kuan was drunk or something. He fell into a pit and broke his hands and feet. Now he was still lying in bed in the Colonel Hospital. He couldn't get out of bed for at least 1 or 2 months. Sometimes Saint-Air would wonder, did Jean Couin really meet with an accident? And that night, Mark didn't seem to go out of the room. But she still didn't know. She only knew that there was one more man in her tofu shop. It had nothing to do with her. It was just an accidental arrangement that made her pull him out of the river. The man claimed that he lost his memory. Then he said that his name was Mark and he lived here temporarily. Steam curled up. Saint-Air picked up a thin piece of shaped tofu skin and then hung it up to dry. When it was cold, it would become tofu. Chung Yiran was busy all day as usual. Of course, there was progress. After all, he enjoyed so many resources. Chung Yiran could feel that the company seemed to pay more attention to him, because Chung Yiran obviously spent more time on him these 2 days, and he was so polite that Chung Yiran was surprised. But he still remembered that night when he saw Mr. Zhong in KNC and the last sentence that Mr. Zhong said. After a day of classes, Chung Yiran was a little tired. When he went back to the resting place, he found that Li Zifeng seemed to have been here for a while and was reading a magazine. This person was always able to arrange the things he needed very well. "Oh, you're back." Li Zifeng hurriedly put down the magazine and smiled. "How do you feel today?" "Not bad." Chung Yiran, who had just sat down, was tired. His head knocked on the sofa, and he looked at the ceiling absent-mindedly. Li Zifeng laughed. "Come on, let me tell you a good news. The time of your debut show has been fixed. It's a primetime program, and you have time to sing a song and interact with the host." "That's really good news." Chung Yiran recovered some spirit and nodded. Li Zifeng said, "Work hard. I'm waiting for your first victory." Chung Yiran was full of confidence. But Li Zifeng suddenly said, "Yiran, I went to see Hongguan yesterday." "Really?" Chung Yiran nodded. "What did he say?" Li Zifeng paused and shook his head. "He refused me and didn't want the job in the TV station." "Why?" Chung Yiran was stunned. "Isn't it good?" Li Zifeng smiled bitterly. "It is good, but he said something to me." "Yiran, tell me honestly, are you hiding something from the company?" Chung Yiran was stunned and subconsciously thought of the guitar. Did he find out something? Chung Yiran couldn't help but recall the performance in front of the big boss. That night, although he conquered all the guests, he didn't see anything strange about the big boss, Mr. Zhong. The boss didn't seem to be affected by the guitar, and finally said something to him that he didn't understand. So far, Chung Yiran always felt that the words had other meanings, which made him vaguely uneasy. Chung Yiran couldn't hide the uneasiness in his heart at this time, so he showed it in front of Li Zifeng. "I don't know what you want to say." Li Zifeng took a deep breath. "Yiran, Hongguan told me something. When you were drifting in Beijing." "Hongguan?" Chung Yiran was stunned and subconsciously said, "Could it be? It turned out not to be about the guitar." But if it was about the thing when they were drifting in Beijing, then Li Zifeng nodded. "Yes, he told me that you had done something wrong and that you had stayed in the detention center for a few months." "He actually told you?" Chung Yiran suddenly interrupted Li Zifeng. "He actually did this." "Why?" There was a trace of anger on Chung Yiran's face. He didn't want to think about the past, and they had promised not to mention it. But this promise was broken like this. Hongguan, just because I had the chance to realize my dream, you became like this, ignoring the previous promise? Chapter 453. Li Zifeng gave Chung Yiran a cup of hot water. Chung Yiran had been silent for some time. Li Zifeng saw that he had digested most of the information, so he took advantage of the time and said regretfully, "I told you, people change sometimes." Chung Yiran frowned and squinted his eyes. Li Zifeng sighed again. He refused the job in the TV station. "It seems that he is not satisfied. I feel that he still wants to have a good opportunity to develop himself. He thinks that he is not worse than you. I mean, he should also want to debut." "How could he debut?" Chung Yiran suddenly got angry. He didn't know where this anger came from. He even said without thinking, "He is worse than me. It's impossible." But Chung Iran soon calmed down and felt that what he said was too much. Meanwhile, he looked at Li Zifeng and said uneasily, I didn't mean to hide it from the company. Li Zifeng said, kindly, it doesn't matter. I won't talk about this kind of thing casually. After all, it's not a glorious thing. But you don't need to worry too much. Many stars have some messy things before their debut. I've seen a lot of them. Don't worry, I know how to deal with it, and I can handle it well. Who are we? We exist specifically to deal with these matters for you. Is there really no problem? Chung Iran asked anxiously. Li Zifeng said seriously, you don't believe me, but you have to believe in the strength of our company. The company's crisis PR is not just for show. Moreover, we want you to be popular. What's the benefit if we don't let you be popular? Chung Iran was silent. For the entertainment company, the most important thing was that their artists were popular. Li Zifeng said seriously, but since some things are out in the open, I'm not afraid to be the ugly one. You let me deal with this matter. So you have to trust me and give me full authority to deal with it. And you can't have any contact with Hongguan anymore. You don't even want to change your guitar. He patted Chung Iran's arm and said softly, I know you are a person who cherishes old friendships, so I'm afraid you will be soft-hearted. But you have to understand that some people value your soft-heartedness, so they have something to rely on and want a yard after getting an inch. If you are willing to talk with him, it will only make him feel that you are still thinking about him and won't let him go. You see, he even exposed your past. What else can he not do? If he is shameless, there is no need to worry about anything, right? What? What are you going to do? Chung Iran hesitated. Li Zifeng said, You don't worry, we won't do anything illegal. However, in this line of work, there were always some other effective methods. But I promise, we won't do anything too extreme. After all, we don't want to make trouble, right? I think Mr. Hong is just a little bit unbalanced. As long as we give him enough compensation, he won't really make trouble. After all, he won't get anything even if he makes trouble, right? Seeing Chung Iran still hesitating, Li Zifeng said softly, Iran, the time of your debut show has been fixed. If this matter distracts you and you perform badly, it will be a fatal blow to you. You have to think clearly about your future and your dream. A man should put his career first. Besides, as you said, Hongguan is a man who loves his wife. He doesn't want anything to happen to him and make his wife worry, right? I see. Chung Iran took a deep breath and nodded. Then, I'll leave it to you. Li Zifeng gave a nice smile. Don't worry, I have the most experience in dealing with this kind of thing. You have a good rest, and I won't disturb you. By the way, I've arranged some relaxing activities for you. You can have a good rest. Chung Iran gave a start. He didn't understand what Li Zifeng meant by relaxing activities. However, after Li Zifeng left, the door of the lounge suddenly opened again. An extremely tall and gorgeous woman with a seductive aura walked in gently. She closed the door and came to Chung Iran slowly with a smile. Then she sat on his legs and cupped his face. The fatal tenderness opened up all the male cells in Chung Iran's body, making him breathe rapidly. The boss's finger tapped on the club's counter gently. Then a light screen of about 22 inches projected in the air slowly disappeared. The final picture of the light screen was that a man and a woman were about to fall into the vortex of the most primitive impulse. That day, the boss of the club said that he wanted to drink something, so Miss Maid specially made some new cocktails. It was pleasing to watch you, ye shake the snow pot. The light blue wine was slowly poured into a fixed cup, and then Miss Maid used tweezers to pick up ice cubes and put them in. Every movement was natural. Ding! The ice cubes made a sound in the cup. Ye slowly pushed the finished product to Luocho. Master, it's done. Yes. Luocho smiled, but didn't pick it up to taste immediately. Instead, he suddenly said, I was just thinking, is Li Zifeng actually the messenger of our club? Seeing you just smiled, Luocho said with a strange expression. It's quite interesting. Yi said indifferently, Instigation is the most common means of human beings. Because instigation is the easiest way to profit. Since Li Zifeng wants Cheng Yiran to completely trust him, of course, he needs to sacrifice something else. Luo, Chiu suddenly said. I suddenly thought of something. If it was a few years ago, when I was still a high school student who didn't know anything, I would probably severely criticize the dirty adult world. Master, don't you like this Li Zifeng? Yu Yi asked softly. Luoqiu finally tasted Miss Maid's work. He stopped the taste in his mouth and stopped his sight on Yu Yi. No, I think his face is more real, Boss Luo said softly. It represents a part of the truth. With that, Luoqiu took out some of his new work from his cup and sent it to Yu Yi. Drink with me. I'll let you know what the taste is. The boss gently brushed his finger across Miss Maid's lips, giving her a brief taste that could reach the soul of her artificial body. It's sweet. Chapter 454. Hong Guan came to the hospital as usual. But to his surprise, when he came to the public ward, he didn't see his wife, Jin Xiao. Hong Guan thought that his wife might have gone for a checkup or to the toilet, but looking at the quilt that had been folded on the bed, Hong Guan had a feeling of uneasiness. Even the daily necessities here couldn't be found. For a moment, Hong Guan was completely panicked. He ran out of the corridor without thinking, grabbed a nurse and asked, "Oh, Jin Xiao. She was transferred to another ward early this morning." Transferred to another ward? Hong Guan was stunned. Yes, she was transferred to a single ward on the 9th floor. Hong Guan went all the way to the 9th floor with doubts. Of course, it wasn't the floor where the public ward was originally located, but another floor. In short, it was a place for rich patients to stay and recuperate. In front of the door, Hong Guan calmed down, then pushed the door and entered. He couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the layout of the ward, which was not worse than that of a high-end hotel room. Of course, he did see Jin Xiao. In addition to Jin Xiao, he even saw another man, Li Zifeng. Mr. Hong, are you satisfied with this single ward? Li Zifeng always greeted people with a smiling face. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. Not to mention that Hong Guan had already passed the age of impulsiveness, and his wife was here, so he wouldn't do anything. Hong Guan smiled and nodded to Jin Xiao, who was sitting on the bed in the ward and looking at him. Then he closed the door of the ward and came to the elevated floor of this floor to talk to Li Zifeng formally. I don't understand why you do this. Hong Guan frowned. Mr. Hong, don't you want your wife to get the best care during the delivery period? Li Zifeng smiled and said, there is a single nurse to take care of her 24 hours a day, and there is also a special doctor to check the ward on time. And I think your wife likes it very much. What did you say to my wife? Hong Guan's eyes suddenly became angry. Li Zifeng said, what did Mr. Hong think I would say? Don't worry, I didn't say anything. I just said that it was Iran's idea. Then tell your wife not to tell you about the transfer and give you a surprise. Hong Guan doubted. Is this really Iran's idea? Li Zifeng said, of course. Otherwise, who would give you 100,000 yuan for nothing? Who found you a job? Who gave you a single ward? To be honest, Mr. Hong, you and I are not related in any way. Do you think I will do these things for you? I was only asked to do this by someone else. You don't have to make things difficult for me. Mr. Hong, the money and the job are still valid. You just have to nod your head and you'll get them immediately. Hong Guan shook his head. I don't understand. I never asked for these things. Why did he give me these things? Also, why didn't he look for me personally? Why did he send you? Li Zifeng said, Mr. Hong, let's not beat around the bush. What Iran means is that if you have any difficulties, you can ask for his help. But he won't see you personally, so he hopes you won't look for him again. He really said that? Hong Guan suddenly grabbed Li Zifeng's collar. Make it clear. Li Zifeng didn't push away Hong Guan's hand. He just said seriously, Mr. Hong, different industries have different rules. Since Iran chose this industry, he must make some decisions and give up some things, especially the things that are not good for him. You may not know how important a public figure's image is, but we all know it. I think Iran has gradually understood it. So I must not be surprised when he makes such a request of me and asks me to help him. On the contrary, I think this is the right choice. He really... Hong Guan's face was dejected. At this time, Li Zifeng suddenly opened his handbag and took out a document. Mr. Hong, here is a confidentiality contract. I hope you can sign it. The content is very simple. Mr. Hong, you must promise not to disclose Chung Iran's past in any way. No matter who asks you, you can't answer. In addition, you can't contact Chung Iran in any way. Otherwise, you will be held responsible according to the content of the contract. Of course, since we asked you to do this, we will give you enough compensation. 300,000 yuan, a job in the TV station, and your wife's hospitalization fee. Hong Guan took the contract, glancing at it quickly. Then he angrily patted Li Zifeng's chest. Why? What is this? Cut off the relationship? Tell me. What does Chung Iran think of me? Ask him to come out and tell me clearly. He has the guts to do this, but he doesn't have the guts to see me? Mr. Hong, why don't you leave us the last bit of friendship? Li Zifeng was not angry. Instead, he said in a slow tone, think about your wife. She followed you without any complaints. Have you given her anything? You can't even provide her with a good ward, and she is pregnant with your child. This directly hit Hong Guan's weak spot, making him unable to say anything. Li Zifeng took out a pen. 300,000 yuan. A good job, the best ward, a healthy baby, and all the expenses. Mr. Hong, you can get it just by signing. You should be able to weigh the pros and cons. Hong Guan took a deep breath and suddenly grabbed Li Zifeng's pen. Chung Iran, Chung Iran. What a good Chung Iran. You have guts, you have guts. Hong Guan quickly signed his name on the document. Don't worry, since I've signed this document, I won't say a word about it, and I won't mention anything bad about him. But you can tell him that in this life, we are complete strangers. I don't want the money, and I don't want the job either. As for the hospital treatment fee, just treat it as if I borrowed it. I, Hong Guan, have hands and feet, and there will be a day when I return it. You can tell him that in this life, I, Hong Guan, have recognized the wrong person. With that, Hong Guan threw the signed document in front of Li Zifeng, turned around, and walked away. Li Zifeng chuckled, but squatted down and picked up the document on the ground page by page. He said to Hong Guan's back, Mr. Hong, whenever you want money or a job, just give me a call. But Hong Guan didn't turn back. Hong Guan, you bastard, I mistook you for someone else. In Chung Iran's roar, Li Zifeng was baptized by the pages of the document again. Li Zifeng looked at the scattered pages of the document, then squatted down and picked them up one by one. His face didn't show any anger after being humiliated, but became calmer. Li Zifeng stroked the pages of the document with his fingers, then said slowly, Iran, it's clear. Li Zifeng pointed to the beginning of the contract. Look, this contract indicates the party A and the party B. The party A is Hong Guan, and the party B is you. The party A promises to the party B that it won't tell anyone about that thing. But the party B must pay 2 million in cash and all the expenses of the party A's wife during the hospitalization period. If the promise can't be fulfilled, the party A will unconditionally disclose the fact that the party B has a criminal record and has been imprisoned to the media. Li Zifeng turned to the last page, pointing to the party A's position. Look, the party A signed Hong Guan. Is this his handwriting? Chung Iran waved his hand and slapped it away. Take it away, I don't want to see it. I get angry when I see it. But this is his request and final negotiation. Li Zifeng sighed. Even if you don't like it, you're the passive party. Chung Iran suddenly kicked the tea table. I don't have 2 million to give him. Where can I find it for him? Although he was highly valued by Feiyun Entertainment, he didn't sign a formal contract until now, but only a simple training contract. To put it bluntly, it was the condition of an intern. In my opinion, you don't need to worry about the money. Li Zifeng patted Cheng Yiran's shoulder. I'll find a way to pay for you. What? Cheng Yiran gave a start, frowning. Why do you want to help me? Li Zifeng smiled. Because you and I have the most solid relationship, and we're brothers of interests.